Hello everyone, welcome back to Ask a Scientist Gaming, where we combine mediocre gameplay with expert science. I'm Ken Hansen, Associate Professor in the Department of Chemistry and Biochemistry. I am a molecular photochemist slash photophysicist, which is a fancy way of saying I shine light on molecules and do useful stuff with it. But more importantly, joining me today is Dr. Chris Mills. Dr. Mills, would you mind introducing yourself?
I am Chris Mills from the Department of Computer Science. I really focus on teaching, but my research area is trying to make robots do all the SQL queries for us.
That's fair. All right, so what do you usually teach?
I have taught a crazy number of classes, mostly C#. I developed the C# class. I also teach AI courses and intro to programming, basically the gambit, software engineering, all sorts of stuff.
Awesome. So presumably we'll have some of your students in the audience, but we'll see. All right, equally important, what game are we starting with?
Robotron 64.
Robotron 64
Dates
for
me a little bit.
the Nintendo 64. Oh, that's okay. That is perfectly acceptable.
From 1964.
All right, you should let the startup menu play through because this is amazing, ladies
All
and
right.
gentlemen. Calm down, Bronco. Welcome back. Good to see you. It's been a while. That is perfect. So for those of you that don't know, Robotron 2084 was the original version of this. It was a stand-up arcade game, and then it got ported to, I think, early PC, and then eventually Nintendo 64. All right, let's do it. Do you have infinite lives? Do you want infinite lives?
We'll do it live.
All
at
right,
the moment.
we'll see how far you go.
I was doing fine before, and now I'm gonna totally screw it up.
No worries. Well, I'll give you a few seconds to settle in before bombarding you with questions, but it'll come back really quick. Calm down, Bronco. This game looks awesome. You are somewhat correct.
Yeah, it's according to your expectations. I
Yeah.
think that's really what it comes down to.
I mean, so the original, the PC one and the stand-up arcade one, it was a two-dimensional, like, it looked like the guy was walking sideways on a two-dimensional plane, and you could shoot all directions. But yeah, this one they added a pseudo 3D component. But really, it's still just a 2D scroller. There's no...
Yeah, there's the illusion of height.
Yeah,
I think it's the best we can get.
they added 3D to it, in name only.
Yes, it's 3D in the PAL symbol on the box.
Dune's Table Ramsby.
Yes.
Every time you lose a life in the game equals one shot. So we do have standard internet units on the channel where you can suggest we take a drink. And so we don't have shots now, but for 500 points, you can suggest we take a drink. Good night, Bryn. All right, saying good night to the
I love
daughter.
your hat.
Good night, daughters. Okay, fine. All right. Let me test it. Calm down, Bronco has redeemed take a drink for 500 internet units. So, Chris, you can pause. I don't know if you can pause this game. You can. Cheers. Welcome to the stream. Calm down, Bronco. Thank you. It's a pleasure as always.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us on Wednesday night. First week of classes. Are you teaching this summer?
I am. But I'm teaching classes I've taught before, which is quite a blessing.
Are you teaching tomorrow?
I am not teaching tomorrow. I taught today.
All right, perfect. So we'll drink as much as we want tonight. So cheers, calm down, Bronco. It's good to see you. Actually, Bronco, Amy Sang asked where you ended up for graduate school. She was potentially excited about you joining her group, but I had to break the news to her. So
Where I went to graduate school?
no, I know Calm Down Bronco, a former student of
I
mine,
gotcha.
and he got into grad school this last year. So congratulations
I might have
again. All right, are you ready to start taking on some questions?
I would love to.
All right.
I'm gonna die more. Just everyone's.
Jay Seashton. Is it possible to write an AI that can analyze the improvements of a generational AI? Like something to predictively change the genome? There's a lot in that.
Absolutely, yes. So it is theoretically possible to do that. The issue is if you can actually generate the data to train the thing, right? So if you imagine AlphaGo, right, it's just playing a game. Optimizing anything is effectively just playing a game. And so it boils down to can you generate incrementally improvement or incremental improvements in data to train an AI how to do it. And that's really what it boils down to.
I mean, so for the broader audience, machine learning AI, a lot of people see these as buzzwords. What's the formal definition or the formal, I don't know, partitioning of those topics?
Of AI
And machine learning.
Yeah, so AI is the idea that instead of like writing a C++ program or whatever, you can create a piece of code that can learn. And so that's really the artificial intelligence part. Machine learning is basically just trying to create a machine that learns from data. So there are lots of alternatives, typically like more historical ways of doing things, like creating rules that the system follows, that kind of thing. Machine learning is basically just a subsection of AI.
I see. So
I just hugged that. God, I don't think I'm supposed to do that.
hitboxes. So you've taught an AI class. Is there a machine learning class as well? Or those
so-
fall under the same umbrella?
That's a weird kind of story to tell. So I took over Intro to AI in 2019, and the Intro to AI course in the computer science department is really about the broader concept of AI. And this is the first time, or my first semester in the department. And I was like sort of young and naive and like wanted to like change the world or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I completely changed this guy's syllabus to be entirely machine learning driven, because that's kind of where everything has ended up. And I was told very quickly that was a horrible idea and I shouldn't do it. But and I was given the semester sort of to do it. And so we have some courses specifically on machine learning. And in fact, a lot of the departments at FSU have them. Statistics has a couple, math has a couple. We actually have a new master's program in data science that has many of them. So they're significantly different. It's really according to who you talk to about the relative importance, that kind of thing. But yeah, I've taught an AI course that was supposed to be AI in general and accidentally made it machine learning, and here we are.
So you changed it back after that? Is that...
I wasn't invited back to teach it, so I think it taught itself.
So what level class is that?
That's a 4,000 level class, so it's
Okay.
4651.
So it's senior students.
Correct.
That's a requirement, or that's an elective?
It's an elective.
Eventually it'll become a requirement, presumably.
One would certainly think.
All right. Unstable Ramsey wants to know, what are the spicy topics in machine learning right now? Where are the controversies and disagreements? That's fun.
Yeah, so I think the big one is around deep faking. So the idea that you can artificially generate a video or an image or whatever that is humanly imperceptible from reality, but it isn't actually reality at all. And so there's a significant amount of research in trying to detect when a thing was faked. And so, yeah, that's probably the biggest one, largely because it leads to all sorts of like spicy things like generating pornography created by a person that didn't actually create the pornography. And so you could really kind of damage a person's reputation, obviously, with that.
I mean, the next election cycle, it's going to come out hard.
I have to imagine that essentially that becomes the weapon of choice at some point.
Yeah, because it was okay 2 years ago, and now it's a lot better, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, it is very, very good. So there are entire like YouTube channels dedicated to sort of like educating people about the specific topic, but actually trying to fix it from a scientific perspective is extremely difficult.
I mean, so I guess that's what are the spicy topics of machine learning right now? So there's the applications of machine learning, which can be very diverse. Within the machine learning community, is there any like intrinsic developmental controversies, like one method's winning over another, or?
Yeah, so I think I can, I don't even remember, what was that?
I don't
Was that
know.
a real
Bonus
thing?
level?
Good Lord. So I think from my perspective, one of the things that's kind of spicy is people using seemingly more complicated models simply because they're more complicated and thinking that somehow they're better because they're more complicated. So a lot of the research that I do with undergraduates is around can we generate a very simplified model that does the same or better than a really complicated sort of state-of-the-art model. And I died for an air quote, but that's
worth
fine.
it.
So I think that's probably spicy in terms of like developmental sort of ideas. There are whole sort of journals and conferences and all of this around like making the next greatest model, but there's not a lot of work around if you need the next greatest model in order to actually perform a task. And so there's lots of kind of back and forth about that.
So it's not quite to the optimization phase where people are trying to cut milliseconds and like.
You would think that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of so a friend of mine actually calls it salami research, right? So the idea that I can create model A and then get a paper published, and then I can make a 2% improvement and then publish another paper. That drives a lot of research, and it isn't really beneficial to people who actually use the technology. And so that is kind of a controversial, kind of competing viewpoint.
So I don't know how familiar you are with computational chemistry, but like software packages develop computational chemistry. There's one company called Gaussian that runs one of the standard purchasing software packages. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
The first ever computing job that I had in 2007 was in a computational chemistry lab that used Gaussian.
Okay. Have you heard of Banned by Gaussian?
I have not.
So there's a cohort of people that basically Gaussian, anytime somebody publishes comparing their numbers and their software and their theory versus other software packages, they ban you from using Gaussian. And so it's a website called Banned by Gaussian where they don't want you to compare.
Totally makes sense. And that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah. I mean, it's just such a selfish way to view it, but they are selling a product. Like, I get that, but also, like, just stand up to the challenge. Wow, you snuck through that one. That was nice.
Yeah, that was my Le'Veon Bell moment for the night.
All right. Question from me. What are we drinking tonight and why?
So this is a Big Nose IPA. I had no idea what this was, and I also work as the acting COO of a local tech company, and my business partner and I run a tailgate at FSU every football season. And he texted me that he had found the next greatest beer on Earth. Like, this was the greatest thing he's ever had in his life. And it ended up being Big Nose. And I sort of was like, this can't be real, but I loved it. And so
lived up to the hype.
Here we are. Yes, very few things, especially in AI, live up to the hype. But this was it.
That's amazing. Calm down, Bronco. Thank you for listing the drink there, putting in the drink command. There's a link if you guys are interested. Big Nose. Oh, that should be IPA instead of IPC. My apology. Oven Johnson, thank you for the follow. Welcome to stream. Oven Johnson is actually the one that suggested you should join us, so you might know who that is.
I talked to him earlier today, I think. Yeah. If I'm remembering Discord handles correctly.
But Oven Johnson has redeemed request a factoid. So, no pressure. It's time to deliver.
Crap. So this is the thing that I forgot to do. So I have to think. we do not get publicly. So we basically stand around the tent and then watch other people get publicly schwasted. if that like.
So that's related to the chat comment. Run a tailgate.
Yes,
so you guys have a sign for your company or a tent for your company, or is it just for fun?
It's really for fun.
Okay.
I think that by necessity it will become not less for fun. I almost said less for fun. But there will eventually be signage there. But it's like 4 or 5 FSU tents with a bunch of TVs and people doing irresponsible things that aren't named me.
That's fair. Sounds like a standard tailgate. All right. Oven Johnson still wants a factoid though. Detoured briefly, but we're coming back.
A factoid
just
about
anything.
Oh no. I think I'm dead.
Oh no. Did that just disconnect on us?
Okay, it really wants me to provide a factoid.
Yeah, it does. Take your time.
Crap. Oh, there we go. That was an easy fix.
All right.
Crap, why are facts so hard to figure out?
No, it's on the spot when you're under pressure.
Man.
All right, how many lives do you have left?
I have apparently
Why is
5. Oh, wow.
Why is it
Sabotage. So Oven Johnson, can you give me like an area you want a factoid about like ancient Egyptian mythology?
He's opening it to anything here.
Oh, crap. He's flying.
Man, I apologize. I don't know. So we're running a Nintendo 64 controller, but we're doing it with a USB port, and sometimes it disconnects, and I have no idea why. So
We got through it.
Something's wrong with this USB controller.
Okay, so I'll give you the cheapest factoid.
All right, here it is.
So the cheapest factoid is that at the end of the day, AI is just math, right? So like a whole bunch of people really want to, back to the Gaussian product sort of perspective, they want to put AI in a box and then sell it to people. And so when we started our company, one of the main ideas was to make data entry for professionals easy by AI. So you like instruct a machine to do data entry for you, and then it's done. And we joked that a lot of companies, what they would do is they would effectively create like a form, like a Google form, and they would slap on the box. Now with AI, and ultimately, like what that is it's just linear algebra, right? Like at the end of the day, that's it. And so there's no magic to AI, and I think that's my first factoid. It's a crappy one, but it needed to be said. Yes.
I mean, that's interesting. There's no threshold of AI or not AI. Is that the issue? Like, if someone autofills an Excel spreadsheet, is that
Exactly.
like,
So
that's AI?
a lot of my PhD research, or essentially all of my PhD research, was in software engineering, right? And so a lot of software engineering is trying to figure out what should and should not be regulated from a code perspective. And my gut reaction is nothing. But then you start seeing people like take advantage of consumers based on the word AI, and then you start rethinking maybe that stance. So you're right. I mean, a lot of it is a lack of definition around what it actually means. Some of it is a lack of setting realistic expectations for like users. So just because your financial system has AI doesn't necessarily mean it's going to do everything for you. And those expectations aren't set correctly. It really is like a big kablowy icon on a box that says, now with AI, you don't have to do anything. And that's kind of incorrect.
I mean, so is there standardization within your community, like the research community, in terms of thresholds of what AI is and what's not?
It's really driven by the task, right? So there are definitely like published papers on specific tasks and what is state of the art, right? And that's what a lot of sort of scientific endeavor is can we figure out how to do something better? Well, if you don't know what state of the art is, you don't know what is better. But from an industrial perspective, there's very little regulation, and I think that's really the rub.
I mean, but that's the hard part too of like the deep fakes and everything, right? We have the rules don't come in until like 10 years too late.
Correct.
Like, politicians are all 60 and 70 years old and have no idea what's happening. I apologize. You're dying because of me.
That's okay.
I'm going to give you infinite lives just in case it goes down for... I honestly don't know why that's disconnecting. Machine learning will take care of it.
We'll take it apart later.
We might as well. Not gonna lie, I got this controller off of Amazon. It actually feels pretty good for a Nintendo 64.
Yeah, everything that I've bought in terms of Nintendo 64 has been from eBay, and the experience has been much worse. So this is fantastic. And to your point, right? So legal regulation is a whole different thing. And so actually, anybody from the software engineering class this morning, I apologize for rehashing, but basically the entire point of that class is trying to figure out.
That one guy hunted you down.
He was on PvP or something.
Hearing that
is basically that like let's say that you are connected to a pacemaker and some software engineer created the controller for that pacemaker. If there's no skin in the game in terms of software companies or whatever for the quality of that software, you're in a world of hurt, right? And so that wasn't a thing that we thought about until like maybe 10 years ago. And so even safety critical systems, you think about Boeing 737 Max, right? Like these are really problematic things to get wrong, yet we do it anyway. And so that's a huge point in the software engineering community.
Well, those guys are 3D. They get up above the level.
He tried to RKO me out of nowhere.
All right. Doonstable Ramsey wants to know, maybe you guys could collab on this question. What are the applications of machine learning and computational chemistry? What are the limitations right now? Has AlphaFold solved protein folding? So that noise you guys are hearing is me resetting the controller and saving Chris's life. He really owes me.
He's doing PPR right now.
Anytime that disconnects. All right, computational chemistry. How are they using machine learning? Are you up to date on?
I'm not as up to date as maybe you are, but I think I would caution the use of a question like, has shape fold or protein folding been solved, right? So that's a huge question. And so one of the things that I kind of preach over and over and over again is that many questions in science don't necessarily have binary answers.
Yeah.
And so it's this huge continuum. And so definitely one of the areas of computational chemistry that's benefited from machine learning is optimization of things like protein folding. And so if you're talking about kind of trying to optimize
what was that?
Curve fitting, that was a weird alien brain.
All right.
Completely negating my power up. Just
sorry.
Entirely. Yeah, so if you kind of boil everything down to an optimization problem, machine learning is very, very good at optimization. I'm not really versed enough in the chemistry anymore to answer the question further than that.
Yeah, I don't know cutting edge. I mean, they're applying it to a lot of problems, like, optimizing materials for things. Just get, like, if you get a data set, here's a composition and here's its property, and you just run that a million times, you'll get some kind of pattern out of it. In fact, we hired somebody through the Data Sciences Initiative, actually, to join our department to do machine learning and AI, because it's really hot right now. But, I mean, when I think about limitations, the thing that's going to be the most major breakthrough, as far as I can tell, and this, your expertise in natural language processing, is as soon as computers can interpret literature and like translate that to a spreadsheet, it's off the rails. Like, it changes everything, because then you have, every molecule that's ever been made, a list of the properties associated with it. Does it cure cancer? Like, all that information is out there right now, and humans can't possibly process that much data. But as soon as we have, natural language processing, as far as I can tell, that's going to be the major threshold event.
Yeah, and it turns out that natural language processing from a computational perspective is as complicated as you imagine it would be.
Yeah.
So
words are hard.
You could definitely create a bot that would go through a nigh infinite number of websites and sort of summarize them. And so summarization techniques are very well baked at this point. But the question is, how much damage is bad data going to do to your model? So you always are going to have some cleaning initiative in there to sort of like vet the data that the AI is going to feed from. And so it's never going to be, in my mind, like a silver bullet kind of, you turn the machine on and then suddenly we get to Star Trek The Next Generation. I think that we're much further from that than we would like to imagine.
Well, and the other issue is you're just fundamentally limited by the quality of your data, right? So if somebody publishes something wrong, it's all of a sudden an outlier data point. Turns out that's a real big issue, and they're talking about using like AI and machine learning for like prison sentences to make them less biased, but their data sets are already intrinsically biased.
Exactly.
So it's garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah, and so there are a whole bunch of kind of papers or initiatives in that area, right? So Microsoft Tay, I'm not sure if you're familiar with what that was, but so Microsoft created Bot Framework, and so it was basically a competitor to Google's Dialogflow, and it's basically pre-canned sort of natural language processing. You just like turn it on, and it does a bunch of stuff. and they created this Twitter bot called Tay, and it basically from the internet learned to be racist and horrible. And it
Yes.
became a huge PR issue for Microsoft.
As it would.
And yeah, it didn't live for very long. And so that's exactly the same kind of thing that you're talking about. And that still affects humans, right? So if you imagine like vaccines causing autism, right? Like that's largely predicated on incorrectly gathered data or incorrectly sort of reviewed hypotheses. And so that's a thing that humans experience. So of course, like machines would experience the same thing, but maybe to a larger degree.
Robo judges. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing is like
Judge
you'd rather
Dredd. Right? Like it's,
that is terrifying though. So when we did in-person Ask a Scientist, George Pesto. Oh no, what? Oh, game paused. Okay, I thought you ran out of lives. I thought we had infinite. But George Peste is in charge of the criminal sciences, and that's something they're wrestling with because people want to implement it.
yeah.
Arthur of Hyrule, thank you for the tier 1 subscription. We appreciate it. You guys don't have to financially support the channel, but we appreciate it. It pays for beers that we get to drink on a Wednesday night and don't have to teach tomorrow, which is really nice.
Yes,
but
thanks.
Thank you for the support, the subscription. We do appreciate it. Calm down, Bronco. The 24K came out. Thank you. Yeah, if you guys are going to subscribe, use your Amazon Prime account and attach it to Twitch so you can use the Twitch Prime, which is a free sub every single month. Jeff Bezos writes us a check directly for $2.50. Just kidding.
Nice guy.
Yeah, he's clearly a great guy. But also owns Twitch, if you didn't know that, so heads up.
All right.
All right.
We'll edit that out. So.
Yeah. Edit that out when we post it to YouTube, and then machine learning takes over. All right. Oven Johnson, I saw a meme that said machine learning is glorified curve fitting. If you had to explain that like I'm a 5-year-old, what would be the best way to explain that?
So, as many of my students know, I went to grad school twice, and one of the times was in math, and one of the times was in computer science, and almost all of my experience in math was around curve fitting. And it turns out that curve fitting really uses this idea called interpolation. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to manufacture data between data points that you know are correct. And what machine learning is actually doing is it's taking an immense amount of data and it is manufacturing all that data in the middle for you based on patterns. So you yourself with your human brain don't necessarily have to think about why something is true. The machine just kind of tells you that it's true based on historical precedent. And curve fitting is exactly the same, right? What you're trying to do is manufacture those data points between known to be correct data points. You're just trying to do it with math yourself, and machine learning does it for you.
That sound is terrible.
That is the sound of me dying a lot.
That's the death sound? Or it's
that
a
is
particular
the
flavor of death.
That is the sound that you ran into these very not happy ropes here, like VIP ropes. Not great. All right.
Nice. Oh, Arthur of Hyrule is a computer science grad school from FSU alumni. Had his cousin on, Dr. Steve Leonard, who's from the biology department, does like nano patterning and stuff like that. That's awesome. Arthur, welcome back. Thank you for joining us. Computer science and biology bridge the disciplines. I play this game with myself, like, what flavor of chemistry is going to be put out of a job first by artificial intelligence and machine learning? Because there are certain tasks that can be accomplished, like how many employees can be replaced by an Excel spreadsheet, let alone an artificial intelligence?
I have a story about that for later, too.
Later, or we can do it now? Actually, we can catch up on a question. All right. Ka Golden Eagle, or KA Golden Eagle. I'm late to the stream, so it may have been done already, but can Chris explain it like I'm 5 machine learning? Definitely out of my element, I hear.
Yeah, okay. So let's imagine that you are actually 5. And that somebody has asked you some crazy question, like, how do I drive a car? And as a 5-year-old, you have no freaking clue. So the idea behind machine learning is you're going to take the 5-year-old and you're going to put it in a room with a giant television screen, not unlike A Clockwork Orange. And you're going to make it watch a person drive a car at countably infinite number of times, just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of watching a dude drive a car. And as a result, the machine, unlike a 5-year-old, kind of takes note of everything, right? So it takes note of the position of every car and every obstacle. It takes note of the velocity of the car and what happens to the velocity as the person turns the car and slows the car down. And it takes all of that ridiculous amount of data, and from that, it builds this historical precedent of how cars have been driven in the past. And from that, it tries to deduce how to drive a car in the future. And that kind of it builds up to this kind of weird situation we were talking about before, where if your data is biased, it learns the incorrect way to drive a car. So if you show it tons and tons and tons of video of a person driving a car off a cliff, the machine learns that driving a car off a cliff is totally normal, and maybe that's how it's supposed to be done. And so at the root of it, that's what it is, right? And so the math behind artificial intelligence, or particularly machine learning, is not particularly nice or like friendly. It's mostly numerical linear algebra, which I mean, it's not a thing you teach in high schools typically. And so a lot of it becomes witchcraft at a certain point. But, you know, at the end of the day, most things are math.
I mean, so you have to set some kind of goal parameter, right? Like something it's trying to achieve.
Correct.
And then how does that play into the math?
Yeah, so in general, most of machine learning is based off of a cost function. And so basically everything is geared toward minimizing that cost function. And so effectively hitting a pedestrian has to have a pretty heavy negative impact on your cost function. And then there's also ideas like Q-learning, right, where rules really do play a role in building that cost function. And so a lot of the newer or like sort of different models change that cost function to maybe be discrete, right? So can I optimize a discrete function over some sort of a known parameter set, that kind of thing. And so at the end of the day, all of it boils down to either a convex, hopefully not, or non-convex optimization of some kind.
So I love the machine learning for video game playing. I don't know if you've watched any of those. It's just take an arcade game like this and have it machine learn and just watch it iterate through cycles and get better and better. It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, and that goes back to the can I sort of optimize a machine learner to optimize other machine learners question effectively that was asked at the very beginning. And so as long as you can generate some sort of data format where you can feed that data format into a cost function, you can solve the problem. And so one of the YouTube videos that I actually prescribed as, like required viewing was the original sort of like Dota bot, right? So the bot that learned how to beat the world champion in Dota. And if you can imagine, like the data required to train that bot is non-trivial. Like building that data format is as convoluted as coming up with machine learning in general in some ways. So it's all about data.
Now, there's some really fun examples of that where you talked about the cost parameter or the success parameter or whatever you want to define it as. There was one where they set it as the anytime you get new information, it's considered like a victory and you're going forward, because the idea is if you come across a new screen. But what the AI ended up doing is it found out how to glitch into the wall, so it essentially would make white noise on the screen. So it essentially bounced off and it met the parameter. It did new information because noise is information.
Yeah. And so, that goes back to the point that machine learners are constantly learning. They're just not necessarily learning the things that you want them to learn.
Yeah, just like 5-year-olds.
Just like 5-year-olds. Exactly.
It's pretty fun. All right, Calm Down Bronco wants to know, how long does it take for in the real world for all these iterations of driving to take the computer to learn?
So that is highly dependent on hardware. And so one of the kind of catchphrases, you've heard of CPUs, now there are TPUs, right? So Google has this kind of proprietary hardware that optimizes the optimization of cost functions. And so if you're trying to do this kind of stuff on your laptop, it could take days, it could take weeks, it could take months. If you're trying to do this on a state-of-the-art sort of like cloud hosted Google machine, it could take maybe a couple of hours. So one of the, I'll I'll circle back around to our putting people out of a job kind of conversation, maybe to answer this question. I worked as a consultant between math grad school and computer science grad school. I worked there for maybe 6 or 7 years. And in that process, accidentally put tons of people out of jobs, but not using AI, using really dumb things. So I found out that there was actually a person working at a company, and her office was actually in a closet. And her entire job from Monday through Thursday, she had Friday off, was to take PDFs and combine PDFs into one single bigger PDF. And so I had the unfortunate job of telling the company that they could, buy Adobe PDF and do this from a button click. And her name was Nancy. I remember this, and I've actually contacted Nancy since then. She's much happier not working out of a closet. Everything kind of seemed to work out. But to the point about AI, right, there are tons of menial kind of jobs that AI could take from humans that think they want the menial jobs, but maybe they're destined for better things.
Yeah.
And so one of the first kind of production at scale bots that we created was based on the idea that in certain areas of law, you have to code time entries to this very specific kind of standard, or the client won't pay for you for that time. So it's very much like medical coding. So if you get a medical procedure and it's coded incorrectly, your insurance company is not going to pay for that. And so it turns out that people were paying their secretaries effectively nothing to code things, not understanding that everything is written in legalese, and there's zero chance that as a secretary you're going to pick the right thing. And so it turns out that these people were being tasked to pick one out of 1,680 options, and if they picked the wrong thing, they could often get fired, or they would get at least berated, right? And this is not a great situation. So we built a classification model to actually code things correctly based on time narratives, so the explanation of what the person did, and that achieved like 80% accuracy, when the secretaries that have been doing it for maybe a decade only achieved 50. And so we were able to essentially deprecate that part of their job. That wasn't their whole job. That was definitely a part they didn't want to do. But that model was trained on 100,000 narratives. It's fairly small in terms of just raw training, but even that on a laptop took about 4 hours. And if we moved it to the cloud, it was like maybe 20 minutes. So it really is hardware dependent.
So do these companies come to you with a problem that you solve, or how does that work?
So that is my favorite part of my industry experience. So basically what my company does is we sit around on the internet and we wait for somebody to give us the most ridiculous thing that they could possibly imagine, and then we try to fix that problem. So in a lot of ways, it's basically like being Boba Fett, except for technology on the internet.
The bounty hunting AI, that's I like
basically
it.
Yeah.
No, that's really fun. I mean, and people don't even know this would solve a lot of their problems.
Correct. And they also aren't in the position to think about what of their problems are homotopically equivalent to that problem, right? So many problems don't necessarily look the same, but from a math perspective, I don't know why I'm plugging the math department so hard, but from their perspective, they're the same, right? And so you encounter classification problems all over the place, and the same model can maybe solve it with different data.
Dunstable Ramsey wants to know what your company name is.
I2X Solutions.
I2X Solutions. Is that on your webpage?
It should be, yeah.
All right, I can link to it. So, somebody needs their homework solved. I2X Solutions.
We do not do that. So just to be clear, I have a...
Chegg has reached out to you.
Yes, I have a very clear conflict of interest filed with FSU.
Oh.
My legal team will reach out later, answer any questions.
I mean, that's something I wrestle with general chemistry questions, because there's a standard plug and chug model for testing, right? Like you give these numbers, temperature, pressure, what's blah, blah, blah. And machine learning can do this. Wolfram Alpha can already solve those problems. So what am I actually gaining by testing a student on this? Because it's not a useful learning set. It's not a useful tool for them. We have to ask questions that are more, intricate, more require more thought.
Yeah, you have to know when to go to Wolfram Alpha to be a calculator.
Yeah.
And so from a science perspective, even if you get a degree in STEM, nobody's going to hire you to be a calculator. And that's the kind of the stance that I take.
Yeah. All right, Dunestable Ramsey, cost function equals energy function in the context of chemistry, biochemistry?
Pretty much, yes.
Energy function. So that's interesting. It depends on what you're optimizing for.
Correct.
So like a energetic cost effectiveness, that would be the case. If you're like percent yield, that would be something else. If it's making a complex structure, it would be a different parameter. I mean, it's just what you're trying to optimize for.
Yeah, and you can change the cost function based on your data to be completely different. And in a lot of cases, that can improve your model, right? So the cost function is innately tied to the model, is innately tied to your data, and it's all contextual, right? And so somebody actually brought up in the software engineering class this morning that the answer to effectively every software engineering question is it depends, and that is very true.
I mean, biology, they're interested in energy cost functions because that's like the definition of evolution, right? In terms of energetics and reproduction and things like that, survival. Yeah.
And everything really boils down to path of least resistance at some point. And in my mind, machine learning particularly is a human, a very crude human attempt at mimicking that with, silicon.
Man, these levels are getting heavy, and I'm giving you a more difficult task by... I honestly don't know why this is unhooking. I will look it up after the stream. I apologize if you guys are getting those beeps. I thought about turning off the notification, but then I don't know when you're dying, so I figured
there's no rescue me.
Yeah, the notification helps. And that power-up is pretty solid.
Yeah, there's no brainy guys to kill. Oh,
God, we have never had this issue before. I'm going to blame it on Robotron 64.
It's a firmware problem.
All right, Oven Johnson wants to know, how close would you say we are at this moment to having the most efficient machine learning algorithms? What might the future hold for machine learning and AI?
So what do you mean by most efficient?
What could they mean by most efficient? In terms of computational time or optimization to an answer?
Right. So, I mean, machine learning and AI is really a day-by-day kind of thing, right? So at any moment, somebody could publish the latest and greatest thing, and it's theoretically the most efficient, right? And so it could be the most efficient in terms of energy, or the most efficient in terms of time, or increasingly how much data it requires to actually train the thing, right? And so one of my huge focuses is, great, I mean, if you can give me 100% accuracy, but it takes 9 petabytes of data, I can't operationally use that, right? I don't have that much data. And so efficiency could be like how much training it takes or how long training takes. I think we're kind of in the renaissance of AI in a lot of ways. And so that always, unfortunately, is followed by a crash, right? So at the same time you're getting better at a thing, people are making it a meme, and so they think that you're better than you actually are at the thing. And then eventually the veil falls, and they recognize that they're buying a box with 35% more AI on it, and they become wise, right? And they maybe second guess, or they try to ask questions about what 35% more of means. But I think that we're at the point where people are becoming more educated from a larger sort of societal perspective, based on things like Facebook's data issues, that kind of thing. And so I think it's going to get worse kind of imminently, and then hopefully after resetting kind of expectations around what it should be doing, we'll see a huge renaissance. And at that point, I think that we're way closer to some of the Star Trek The Next Gen kind of breakthroughs that people expect.
And Oven Johnson's follow-up, in terms of what they mean by optimization, seeing how fast we could solve certain issues with machine learning, regardless of power consumption or data usage. Just speed.
Yeah. So one of the major things that I kind of want to be a takeaway is once you generate a model, really that model can solve any number of different problems. The change is really in the data, right? It's in the data, it's in the cost function. So we are really well poised right now to take well-known off-the-shelf models, Dialogflow being a great example. I had a student, an undergraduate student, who wrote an honors thesis in the spring using Dialogflow, right? So off the shelf, you can immediately start doing really interesting things with it. But to the previous point, I think over the next 5 to 10 years, that's going to become even more true, right? You can only build a wheel so many different ways before you start putting out a whole bunch of different vehicles, and I think that's where we're kind of at.
It's fun. All right, so we're 45 minutes in. We should probably throw a prediction up. Which one do you want to do?
Oh my gosh. So let's do that last one. We've been talking about data a lot.
All right. That is a... All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't have your standard internet units, click the follow button, get your 300 standard internet units. We are going to bet them on a prediction. Predictions on Twitch, for those of you not familiar, are typically used to predict outcomes in games. We use them to predict science questions. So we're going to put up a science question for you guys, and you are going to make a prediction on what the answer to this is going to be. And feel free to bet as much as you want, as confident as you want. These standard internet units are useless for anything outside of the stream, but you can make us like request a factoid or take a drink or unlock emotes. It's totally up to you. But we are going to pop up a prediction right now. And so the question is, total global data storage capacity in 2020, how much was it? Less than 5 zettabytes or greater than 5 zettabytes? And a zettabyte, I had to look this up, is 10 to the 21st. So 1 times 10 to the 21st bytes. So is it greater than 5 zettabytes or less than 5 zettabytes? Is there anything you want to add to this question without giving away the answer?
A zettabyte's real big.
10 to the 21 big. That is gigantic. So a hard drive you buy right now is somewhere around terabytes. And a zettabyte is how much more than that?
A lot.
So terabyte is 1 trillion bytes. So that's 10 to the 9th. So this is a lot more than that.
Yeah,
It is.
I was trying to figure out the best way to explain that.
12 orders of magnitude more, which is absolutely insane. So yeah, zettabytes is a lot of information. But the question is, how much collective storage do we have as humanity?
And to provide color commentary, so in 2016, I was at a software engineering conference in Austin, Texas, and we were talking about petabytes. So that's a significant number of orders of magnitude less.
Yeah, so we had Allison Wing on 2 weeks ago, and she does hurricane modeling, like simulates hurricanes, and one simulation is 2 terabytes. So
Right.
that's a lot, but that's still a lot less than zettabytes. So less than 5 zettabytes, greater than 5 zettabytes. How much total collective storage capacity do humans have? You guys have about, 10 seconds to answer this question. Is this something you cover in class?
It is not.
10 to the 21. All right, so Chris, if you want to see the numbers, you can pause briefly. So it was 3-3, but the people that bet greater than bet a lot more money than those that didn't. So what is the answer?
It is definitely greater.
Definitely greater. Greater than 5 zettabytes. And I think the number you had here is 6.7 zettabytes.
Yeah, it's very close to 7. And so anybody who is interested in curve fitting will probably know about like growth rates, right? And so the general trend is super linear, right? And so if you imagine 2016 talking about petabytes, we're now talking about zettabytes. We're going to have to come up with new words in the not too distant future.
There's got to be Latin words beyond zettabytes already, right? Somebody, Arthur of Hyrule redeemed Take a Drink. Presumably they won on that one. So cheers, Chris. Thank you again for coming on. Thank you all for joining us. We appreciate it. Enjoy your standard internet units and making us drink.
I'm glad to make you rich.
This game has some interesting sound effects.
It is. This is what I imagine overstimulation feels like.
Oh. This is something else. All right, Calm Down Bronco wants to know, is AI something that could be much more efficient with the development of quantum computers compared to traditional computers? Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. The answer to that is absolutely yes. So people who do theoretical research in AI, they always talk about the singularity, and so that's become a sort of like weird, memey, sort of like science fiction thing. But quantum computing is, in my opinion, the only way that you actually get there, right? And so if you can imagine, quantum computers can understand things at a fundamental larger way, like capacity, right? And so you're talking about something much more than like just a 0 and a 1 in every position. And so in terms of parallelization, you can get way more bang for your buck for every clock cycle. And so you can imagine that at absolute minimum, what it's going to do is make the process of training much faster, which means that you can incorporate much larger data sets, which means that you can learn much more, which means that you can have much more complicated cost functions, and sort of everything snowballs from there. And so, yeah, I think that would be a huge advance.
So this is an interesting one. Dunstable Ramsey wants to know, what are your thoughts on the Balmer peak, the optimum blood alcohol content for developing/programming?
So I have an answer and then an answer that lets me keep my job, and so I'm trying to split the difference between those. I see the Balmer peak and raise you the peak at which your blood alcohol level is optimized for passing undergraduate coursework. And I think that's absolutely a real thing. I think I went to more physics classes after a drink than not after a drink, and I did better in those instances, and 100% of the cases. So that in my mind is a real thing.
A big spooky skeleton. Thank you for stopping by. Always a pleasure. Enjoy your natural products class. Oh man, I saw there's a Nature Artificial Intelligence article about natural product and drug discovery using AI and machine learning. But this one was a conference where they had it wasn't for drug development for like curing stuff. It was for like chemical warfare, like optimizing chemicals for killing people and doing it through AI. So
I will say I won't disclose too much because this is a whole thing, but I accidentally did that one time. I'll leave it at that. That's a very interesting sort of area of research.
Anyway, I linked to the XKCD comic about the Balmer peak. I hadn't actually heard of that before, but apparently there's a sweet spot of being drunk where your programming skill goes up. I believe it.
I've definitely had employees say that before.
Yeah.
So not at I
was gonna say employees while at work.
No comment.
Yeah. That's fair. I mean, there's a threshold where your inhibition goes down, you relax, but
you think about outside of the box answers to problems.
Yeah, this XKCD graph puts it at 0.135, somewhere about there, but that's like almost twice the legal limit, so probably not that high.
That's like partway on the way to pickle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sound effects. They catch me off guard every time some random 8-bit sound. I guess 64-bit in this case.
Yeah, they're just fancier 8-bit sounds. So I think that portal will take me... Oh, man, I missed it.
Is that true? It's named after Steve Ballmer, who was in charge of Microsoft, and many assumed he was drunk all the time.
I'm pretty sure that that's the case.
He's the one that did the like on-stage celebratory yell when they revealed which version of Windows was that. Brings me back.
So I am the computer science Microsoft homer of the department, and so that makes people believe that I think that Microsoft is infallible. And I just want to dispel that in the moment.
There's literally a YouTube video called Steve Ballmer going crazy on stage. So there it is for you guys. Is it really named after Steve Ballmer? It's amazing.
I feel victimized by this guy. All right, great.
Modern day Winston Churchill. 65. You're doing pretty good. You're only an hour in.
Yeah, I had never been higher than 50.
Oh,
So I think the infinite lives probably helped. Like,
just a little. The controller crapping out on you, however, has not helped at all. So, I like it. First time chat from some Pi Greg. Thank you for joining us, some Pi Greg. If you have questions, throw them in chat. We are happy to answer them. Yeah, we're almost at the 1 hour mark. So my guest today is Dr. Chris Mills. He's an expert in computer science, machine learning, AI. Also Robotron 64. He's up past 65 levels, entering level 66. So ask him questions because he's happy to answer while he marches through this game. We also looked up the speed run of this game, and the answer is to beat 200 levels, it took somebody 3 hours. So theoretically, you can do the entire stream on Robotron 64, or we can change it anytime. It is totally up to you.
yeah, I won't subject people to much more of this, I promise.
Yeah, that's fair.
Oh my god.
6.7 zettabytes. So that's every hard drive ever created by humans, is that?
Yeah, so the survey that was taken from, it only counted currently in service storage.
I see.
So you can imagine that there's definitely a stat out there about how crappy all of the historical hard drives are and how many of them fit on one hard drive right now.
So it's
that would also be interesting, yeah.
But I mean, it's not even an order of magnitude difference. It would be tiny fraction, right?
Between like old and new hard drives.
Yeah.
It would, yeah, I mean, a fraction of a zettabyte.
Yeah.
If that's the ceiling, then yeah.
Man, that's crazy. I mean, so most of that storage is probably gigantic, like warehouse storage, data capacity, like personal storage, personal computers are negligible in that calculation, presumably.
Yeah, I have to assume that. And the other thing that we kind of preach again and again in software engineering is that you would be shocked by how much COBOL code still runs. And at the same time, you would be shocked by how much magnetic tape still exists in the world. And so a lot of that amount of storage is going to be like low volume magnetic tape, kind of like we dug a tunnel under a mountain and put magnetic tapes under it kind of thing.
You still good on beer?
I wouldn't say no to another one. All right, I'll cut myself off at 70. That's 3 additional levels.
But you'll feel like you've won. So
Yeah, I feel like I've passed my personal best, and so everything else is just gravy at this point.
I mean, what I'm amazed by is they've made 200 levels that are progressively hard, which is pretty incredible. They're relatively unique, right? They're
Yeah, so No Man's Sky, right? This goes back to the AI. It's sort of like how do I beat a game kind of concept. Those guys generated an infinite number of levels using generative AI to do it, right? So this is long before that was a thing, and so these poor guys were probably sitting around with not a lot to do and
is that a
making
warp?
polygons. Yeah, I actually caught it that time.
Huh. Man, so I can't remember what game somebody was playing on stream, but I looked up a little background on it, and it turns out they had like 4 levels, but it was like a two-dimensional like overhead. You have to go through the map to get to things and get keys and stuff. The way they made 4 levels into 16 levels was they effectively just rotated the map. So you had 4 directions, and
it's work smart, not hard kind of situation.
And No Man's Sky also generated an infinite amount of rage.
That is not wrong. I never
so
actually
overhyped.
played it.
I didn't either. I saw the rage though. I go to the gaming subreddit regularly, and man, No Man's Sky was the biggest letdown according to them.
I think it got better, right?
Yeah, I guess it's recovered a lot, but on release.
Yeah.
I mean, the big complaint is people are releasing incomplete games now, and it's all downloadable content.
Yeah, so my favorite kind of rage commentary about that was Pokemon Go. So Pokemon Go was actually released with an NP-complete problem being computed inside of it. So what they were actually doing is they were trying to give you the closest mob or the closest monster on a map that they had pre-generated. And so legitimately they were trying to triangulate the position of every player and every monster on a pre-generated map, which is effectively just map covering. And so after they got, like their fifth or their sixth person playing the game, they realized that they had performance issues, and that would do it. I'm trying to do an incalculable number of calculations per user. That's going to be bad. But again, they recovered, right? So
Quickly. I never heard about that.
definitely an incomplete game at launch that got significantly better after the fact. All right, this is the last one. I promise everyone.
No worries. They are not here for the gameplay. Maybe they are. Random map, random keys, random levels. Yes.
These big brain guys are like kind of creepy.
So I have to go back and look at the YouTube video and see how many times you actually died. Not from the controller crapping out, but from
Like
real
a
death.
million. Yeah.
I just go back into Pogo, and the code is still very bad in spaghetti.
Oh,
Pogo?
yeah.
What is I don't know.
That's Pokemon Go.
Oh,
So,
okay.
yeah, the actual code. So this is another thing that I preach about a lot. And actually, I'm attending a conference next week to specifically talk about this. But it's architectural and technical debt, right? So let's say that you publish a game, and people love it, and it works. If the game's code is completely crap, as a company, you have no motivation to fix it because it works. Like, nobody's going to pay you to make crappy code, not crappy code, because it works. What you experience is the inability to add new features. You can't necessarily like patch bugs that have been identified by other people. And so at a certain point in time, having crap code really becomes a problem. But it typically takes years and years and years for that to be the case, which is sort of unfortunate for every consumer of software, which is effectively everyone at this point.
You did it.
Too big.
So you should pause and explain the controls on this. We should have done that early on. So like the original arcade effectively had two joysticks. One was controlling where you are X, Y on the screen, and the other one controls where you shoot. So you should show them the 64 controller and how you were actually controlling that.
So this is...
Here, we'll go to heads.
Move around. This is direction you shoot. So it's actually way easier than the arcade.
So I learned that you can actually hook up two Nintendo 64 controllers and use both of the joysticks. So you can control one shooting and one walking around with two different controllers. So it's
that's
like
high fidelity experience right there, yeah.
All right, which game do you want to go to next?
So I learned in the sort of like pre-trial that I'm horrible at GoldenEye now. So let's try Super Mario.
We'll skip GoldenEye. Head to Super Mario.
I spent a lot of the GoldenEye trial shooting my foot, which is not particularly...
It takes a while to get used to. For those of you not familiar, GoldenEye was one of the first-person shooters that had a joystick associated with it. So instead, we're going to Super Mario World, which was the first Mario game released on the Super Nintendo system. So you're on to that one.
And I have to disclose that 5-year-old me was super pissed that I didn't get regular Mario World because I had played it, and then my parents got me this for my birthday, and I was like, what the hell is this? This is not the right thing, but it's actually way better.
Yeah, no, this is the superior game, and I will fight anyone that says otherwise.
Children are mean. That's just...
Mario World. So
those were my poor students during Project 7. So you see Sumpy Greg. I didn't mean to knock you over with Red Shell.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are 9 o'clock. We just crossed the 9 o'clock line. If you have any questions for Dr. Chris Mills about machine learning, about AI, about computer science, about natural language processing, about object-oriented mapping, is that the terminology you used?
Object relational mapping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you have any questions on any of those topics, he is happy to answer them or talk about Super Mario World.
Or, I mean, I can talk about why that's on the list.
Yeah, I'd love to hear because I don't know what that is.
So I have a really kind of long-running honors in the major project for undergraduate students, not necessarily solely in CS, but predominantly in CS, that the motivation for the project goes something like this, right? So we just discussed how there are yottabytes of data or zettabytes of data out there. The problem is that a lot of that is sequestered in relational databases that only a handful of people actually know how to get to. So if you work at a bank or if you work at FSU, FSU has terabyte after terabyte after terabyte of data in some sort of system that is based on a SQL database or a MySQL database or whatever. And in order to gain access to that, you have to go through IR or you have to go through some sort of process that would give you access to a report or something like that so you can make decisions on the data. And that is not a great situation because let's say that you wanted to create your very own bank and you didn't necessarily want to have a whole separate department that force-feeding data is not good. Spoon-feeding data to people is not necessarily great, right? So the project is to build a natural language interface into that database such that a user that doesn't have any technical abilities, they don't know SQL, could actually ask in English, the database a question and then get a reasonable answer out of it. And so that's ultimately what we're trying to achieve. And in the Explain It Like I'm 5 version of that, if you've ever seen Avengers, effectively what we're trying to do is build Jarvis, right? You don't necessarily have to understand the inner workings of Avenger Tower to be able to do things. You just ask Jarvis and Jarvis makes it happen. And so that is the end goal. So object relational mapping is a part that we've used to kind of get over the first hump there. And one of those, or the first hump, is trying to make a natural language model understand what it is you're actually asking for. So in a sort of Explain It Like I'm 5 kind of way, if you ask, what is Ken's address, which is maybe a little creepy of a question, but it might have to go to multiple tables to answer that question, right? There might be an employee table or a person table, but very likely there's an address table that actually has your address in it. And so the model has to understand that even though it asked for something about Ken, it isn't asking about Ken, it's asking about Ken's address. And we call this the entity impedance problem. So the entity being, I am looking for an address, and the model probably thinks I'm looking for Ken. And so what object relational mapping does is it lets us build out effectively the universe of answers to these questions so that we pre-process your data and then build a model that already a priori knows the answer. So instead of trying to machine translate English to SQL, what we're actually doing is we're training a model that knows the answer to every possible question. And then when you ask it a question, you're sort of amazed that it knows the answer, but it studied for the test. And that last question is the most important bit. So the impedance problem actually is represented technically as a join statement. So in order to get from the user table to the address table, you have to understand what join conditions are there between the user and the address table. And indeed, the model does specialize in writing the join statements for you.
You are just murdering those Koopas. Nice.
Yeah.
Faithful Fairy, NLP is cool. My dad spent his PhD dissertation on Chinese linguistics, and NLP pretty much made his old research useless. I remember Jeremy Howard's AI course, and as an example of predicting grant proposal funding rates. Never wrapped my head around that. Predicting grant proposal funded rates. That's intense.
Yeah, there is a lot of really strange research that you can do with NLP, because you can imagine like how many different areas of life language impacts as a human. So you basically use language to do most things.
Yep. That's intense.
Oh no.
I think you're okay on this one. Unrelated question. Do you want to guess what the speedrun record on this game is?
45 minutes.
So there's a few different records. The answer, the fastest time to get to the end of game credits is 41 seconds. So I don't know if you've ever seen this, but I'm going to send it to you after the stream. They basically figured out a way to write to the RAM so it executes the end credits. So they write to the position and the things they pick up, and it warps to end credits.
All right. So
Yeah.
every person that took the 3330 class, you're welcome.
Why is that?
Because they could write code that doesn't do that.
Yeah, it's crazy how they do it. They basically have it so you have to line things up on a certain XY position on the screen, and you have to like execute it perfectly. And then you have Yoshi grab a coin and it executes. It's crazy. You'll understand it better than I will, but it's the current record is 41 seconds to beat this game, get to the end credits. If you do Star Road in 11 exits, it takes you 9 minutes and 43 seconds.
So the poor folks that did programming assignment number 7 or programming assignment number 4 will tell you that seg faults are very, very hard to predict. And a lot of the times, if you don't seg fault, you get weird results like that. And so again, seg faults are the operating system trying to keep you safe. I think from a Mario programmer perspective, having your game beat in a couple seconds is not being safe.
I mean, but you have to see the video and how they, again, I don't know the nuance of it, but like they figured out that Yoshi has to essentially pull an object in with his tongue, but Mario has to jump off and steal that object before it goes in his mouth, and then that screws something up. And then it executes. It's just insane. But there's a link in chat if you guys want to see more this game beaten in 41 seconds. Reminds me of the Pokemon Blue speedrun. Yeah, speedruns are my favorite hobby outside of science and video gaming. I guess that falls under that category because it's so much understanding and optimization. It is just amazing.
Killed by baseball.
Program 7 wasn't too bad, although I did it with a group, so maybe the distribution wasn't too bad.
So
you were the lazy one.
Some background. So I had never taught 3330 until last semester. And so it is known as, sort of like the class that people hate. And that was horrible right there. So I was off on pacing, as you might have experience in your life. So I allowed people to work in groups because I was actually kind of embarrassed by the complexity of the project. So, I mean, I'm glad that somebody didn't feel like it was the worst thing that they'd ever been assigned.
All right, I just sent you a link to the speedrun. Just so I don't forget, I want you to have it. But there's a YouTube video that walks through how they actually write to code, which is pretty amazing. They actually programmed Flappy Birds through the first level of this game.
All right. This is a level of dedication that is not very common. I've never experienced this level of issues with this level.
No worries. I think you have infinite lives, right? We gave you that? Yeah.
Yeah.
You're 10 Marios deep
I
right
would be
now.
done.
Yeah, just fly over.
Yeah. All right. We're gonna do this in a group project.
Yeah, so one of my hobby games right now is Mario Maker 2. I don't know if you've seen Mario Maker, where people can generate their own levels. It is a beautiful combination of complete garbage, but also awesome levels. So it's kind of hit or miss. That guy is wrecking.
Yeah,
you.
this Nolan Ryan over here is just absolutely. Oh, thanks.
Arthur of Hyrule, I loved 3330. I learned more in that class than I have in most, but I didn't take it with Chris Mills.
At this point, very few people have, and those people probably have a laundry list of issues. That's okay. You live and learn. And you eat fire plants.
Oh, Yoshi. It's a big controversy in the Mario community whether you save or murder Yoshi on the end of the level. Some levels you have to in this game, but some people do it for fun. Oh, like that Yoshi's gone. Free to the world.
Yeah, so he's a free range Yoshi now.
That's perfect. All right. If anyone has questions for Dr. Chris Mills about computer science, machine learning, AI, anything, we're happy to talk about it. But I will ask you one of our standard questions because it's relevant to you. What's your favorite equation?
Oh man. So Black-Scholes is my favorite equation.
Black-Scholes. I do not know what that is, but I'm gonna look it up.
So it is a PDE that attempts to model call strike prices on. Yeah, so I've lived many lives, and one of those lives was as a stockbroker. And one of those lives was as a math grad student attempting to solve PDEs. And PDEs are one of the reasons why I ended up going into computer science, because I freaking hated them. But Black-Scholes, if you could actually solve it, would effectively make you an infinite amount of money, which would be a funny thing to have, really.
Man, I was astounded how many physicists and mathematicians that end up going and working in Wall Street. Like most of the trading is not done by business people. It's mathematicians and computer scientists.
So there's a huge cottage industry, and it's kind of being regulated out of existence, but of like microtransactions, particularly in Forex, so like foreign currency exchanges, where you can literally get a Python bot that's programmed to do like microtransactions and just sort of like set it up on your machine and give it $10 and see what it does. And you can optimize it. So a lot of people do that.
Wow. All right. Dunestable Ramsey has redeemed Take a Drink. So Chris, cheers.
Right.
Thank you again for joining us. Dunestable, thank you for joining us and making us drink.
It's a hard job, but somebody's got to do it.
So one of the reasons I chose a Wednesday night for the stream is usually like in the fall semester, I'll teach at 8 a.m. on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. But Thursday, I don't teach anything. I can drink as much as I want.
I love it. As all of my students know, I have office hours every day, including tomorrow.
Every day.
At 8 a.m.
Wow.
But it's going to be fine.
Every day. Students show up at 8 a.m.?
The panicked ones do.
Okay.
I don't do it on Fridays.
That's fair. So how many classes do you teach? You teach 2 a semester?
I teach a 3-3-2.
Oh, 3-3. Okay.
So I'm theoretically specialized faculty. I got my PhD from FSU. And so that is part of that. But I do research on the side. And it's really largely out of my role at the company. It's where it started. And now I do research with undergrads.
Black-Scholes equation.
Have you ever seen the movie Pi?
Yes. Yes.
This is the math behind Pi.
Oh, that's it.
Pretty
the
much.
Black-Scholes. Yeah. Black-Scholes Merton model? Merton? Merton got left off, apparently.
Yeah, you know.
No, I know.
Crosby, Stills, and Nash. Young is in there somewhere.
So it goes.
I'm just going to be belligerent now because I think that's more education. I said educational, I meant entertaining.
Yeah. Cuddle Puppy, welcome back. I once went to Dr. Wally's office at 6 a.m. He was an early bird teacher. Office hours at 6 a.m., that's just cruel.
I can totally see that. So in my entire life, I've received 2 B minuses. One of them was from David Wally.
There's always got to be that person.
He's really good at his job. I was not very good at mine.
So our chemistry building doesn't have any classrooms, or like no teaching classrooms. It has like lecture halls and stuff like that. So it opens at 9 a.m. and it closes at 5 p.m. And I've had a colleague that he didn't get tenure, but he set up his office hours at 6 p.m. after students couldn't get in the building. Yes.
All right. That is one approach. That's optimization, right? Like,
for a particular thing, but the thing was not getting tenure. So, I mean, that like students will complain about that, and it will show up in some record of some kind. So, yeah, heads up, if your teacher's doing that, you might as well complain about them because they shouldn't be. Oh, every professor's office hours I had during the spring ended up conflicting with my classes. Very unlucky. Yeah, that sucks. There's semesters where so I teach a Gen Chem class of 330 students, and like there's no possible way you can accommodate all those students. So like I used to try to like do a voting thing where pick the office hour and whatever people were most open, but that turned out not to be the most visited office hour. So I just arbitrarily started saying, 2 o'clock on Tuesday and 2 o'clock on Wednesday, and people would show up. So I don't know.
Yeah, and so I actually originally picked 8 because I thought that people would stray away from 8 o'clock classes, and so by midterms they would like know if they needed office hours or not, and then that block would be available.
I see.
And my kids are going to wake me up at 6 anyway. It doesn't really matter to me. So.
That's fair. All right, Cuddle Puppy wants to know, I'm actually interested in getting a master's in AI, but have almost no experience in programming. What should I do to prepare?
So you should learn Python, definitely. And you should definitely take some sort of introductory or maybe read the Wikipedia article about numerical linear algebra. And if you can do those things, then you're pretty much set. I think that's really all you need to do.
Numerical linear algebra on Wikipedia. I'll link that right now. Cuddle Puppy. I'm illiterate though. All right. Do it through sense of smell.
Osmosis, maybe. I would definitely start with Python, right? So Python has libraries that do the linear algebra for you in a lot of ways. In order to optimize, though, you're going to have to get a little bit hands-on with the math.
Cuddle Puppy is our Ask a Scientist gaming troll, but asked a serious question here about preparing for AI graduate school. So
I love it.
I appreciate it.
This guy gave me my blue shell back. Yeah. Thanks.
Oh,
this guy is not a good neighbor.
That was close. Man. The first time I did that in Super Mario World, I was like, this game is the coolest thing ever. The wall running up, because it broke all Mario physics. Mario does not turn sideways, and then all of a sudden he does here.
Mario 64 does the wall jump, and it forces you at some point to do it.
Man. Yeah, the ROM hacks that people have made of these games are absolutely amazing. Numerical linear algebra. Cuddle Puppy. Here's your Wikipedia page. If you know that, you'll be in good shape, along with learning Python.
Yeah, so back to black holes, right? Yeah. One of my major issues with partial differential equations is that you learn about their importance, and then you find out through the grapevine or through an immense amount of coursework that most of them you can't actually solve analytically, right? So you're probably not going to sit down and solve Black-Scholes or Navier-Stokes or one of these like really important equations. And so what you end up doing is numerically approximating them, and that's in a lot of ways what numerical linear algebra is. Can you solve an arbitrarily large system of linear equations at the same time? Probably. Can you do a better job just computationally? Also probably.
Oh, Yoshi!
He gave his life for this win.
Oh.
That I squandered.
All right, we should do a prediction sometime soon. Before that, IR Noodles wants to know, do you think Python is easier than C++?
Absolutely yes. So the joke in 30 last semester was that course was the first time I had used C++ in a production sense in about 15 years. And going back to C++ was sort of like relearning Latin. There are lots of niceties that languages like Python have that C++ definitely doesn't have. And so Python, it's actually used in a lot of summer camps for children for this exact reason, right? It is much more natural in terms of syntax, and it doesn't require you to necessarily do a lot of management on your own.
So your kids, speaking of summer camp, so your kids are 5 and 2?
Yeah, 5 and 2.
So have you started playing with like some of the programming games that they can do?
I tried, and that was not helpful at all.
Yeah.
I think that they're probably too young. My oldest is definitely in the age that he's now interested enough that he could probably do it. The 2-year-old really just kind of stares at you and like whatever.
Yeah.
The interesting thing though is a lot of programming is really just problem solving. And so giving your kids like a puzzle or magnet tiles or whatever is actually kind of preparing them for the same thing. So the thought processes are very similar.
Man, there was this really fun science museum that I went to that had essentially, it was like a robot and you could put in executables, but it wasn't programming. It was like putting blocks in sequence. Like this one was
Yeah.
raise arm, do this. And they'd have like loop functions where you could put it on top and it was amazing. The kids loved it because that's like real time
Yeah.
gratification.
So one of the, I don't know if they still do it, but one of the things that I think it was MIT tried to do is an intro to programming course that did not require a programming language. So it was language agnostic. And so what it really was pseudocode. That was all it was. And so those kind of visual languages do effectively the same thing for your brain, right? You have to figure out how to solve the problem before you write the code. So they basically treat you, or they test your ability to solve a problem independent of the language, and then you can learn the language separately.
Faithful Fairy, that was my IB computer science class in high school. I don't know what IB is. Oh, Faithful Fairy also
I think
said,
it's like AP.
oh, okay, I see.
By
That's
another
the higher level. All right, Faithful Fairy says, was C++ the one without an automatic garbage collector?
Correct. C and C++, neither one have automatic garbage collection because they're managed language, or they are from the perspective of the programmer unmanaged. So the programmer has the managed memory for it.
I see. IB is International Bachelorette. So this is European AP courses. Oven Johnson, what are your thoughts on the Tower of Hanoi problem in programming?
So interestingly, we have a graduate course called Analytical Methods. And in Analytical Methods, you're taught out of a textbook written by Donald Knuth. And it's called Concrete Mathematics. The very first question that you're asked in the course is the Tower of Hanoi problem. And it's effectively like, how do I take a stack of blocks from point A to point B, yada, yada, yada. I think ultimately at this point, in the age of Google, the Tower of Hanoi problem really doesn't have a lot of educational merit because you can look up the solution. It's not like that big of a deal. But there are so many things that are equivalent to the Tower of Hanoi problem that don't look like it, that's really what like employers and graduate schools are looking at this point. So in my mind, Tower of Hanoi is not groundbreaking in and of itself. It's really just an archetype for a problem that's really important to be able to solve.
That's interesting. So you could give that to an undergrad as like a figure out how to write this, like a homework assignment, or how does that
Yeah,
work?
so essentially Tower of Hanoi in some ways is a sorting algorithm of sorts, right? You're taking things from point A to point B, and you just have to find the optimized way of doing it. And really that micro optimization is where the problem's complexity is. So you can ask any number of different formulations of the same problem and get drastically different results. And so I think that's why it's predominantly used in things like technical interviews, because you can recontextualize it to your company setting or your domain.
Makes sense. All right, we should do a prediction. Which one do you want to do?
Let's see. Let's do this guy, because we just accidentally talked about one of the dudes.
All right. See who was paying attention.
I could not have predicted that in my life.
All right.
I would not have told you that Tower of Hanoi would come up if my life depended on it.
That's what's fun about Twitch. Random audience. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to throw a quick prediction up right now. Get ready to spend your standard internet units. If you're not following us, click the follow button, get 300 standard points. They are useless outside this channel, but nonetheless, it is fun to win this and rub it in everyone else's faces. So we're going to give you 2 minutes to answer this question right here. The question is, Who is one of the godfathers of neural networks? Is it Donald Knuth or Jeffrey Hinton? We'll see how many computer science people we have in the audience. Honestly, I don't know either of these individuals. This is far enough outside of my domain that I look forward to learning the answer here. So Donald Knuth or Jeffrey Hinton? Also, IR Noodle, thank you for the follow. Enjoy your standard internet units and bet them accordingly. Be confident in your answer. Bet everything right now on either Donald Knuth or Jeffrey Hinton or not. Note that you are all under Ask a Scientist Gaming honor code where you can't Google the answer. Just guess. Arthur, do not give away answers if you know the answer.
So I will say, anybody who has worked in physics or maybe chemistry that has worked on LaTeX, have you ever used the LaTeX?
I'm familiar with LaTeX. I don't use it. But
so one of Donald Knuth's students actually created LaTeX, which I think says a lot about his character. He's probably malevolent, but, you know.
No worries. I have not committed to a LaTeX life. Long term, it makes your life better, but there's a learning curve. All right, you guys have about 45 seconds. Knuth or Hinton? Who was the godfather of neural networks? I actually don't know. Well, you can sway the outcome. This is a pretty mixed bag here. So we never know ahead of time how these questions will go. Like some of them you think are going to be easy, some of them hard. You never know. It depends on the audience. All right, 15 seconds. Spend those standard internet units. It's important for pride purposes as well as making us drink alcohol.
I feel good about this jump.
You got this. How many times have you died on this level?
A lot. Like an embarrassing number.
I mean, we can put in, like, don't take damage or stay firepower. Or... Nice.
It's largely the sound. The sound freaks me out.
It's stressful. It's like the Sonic drowning sound. Did you ever play Sonic for Sega? That is forever embedded in my brain. And I'm super pissed in the the Sonic 2 movie. They don't have that sound effect. Spoilers. Sorry, everyone. All right. So, Chris, what is the answer? Who is the godfather of neural networks?
It is Jeffrey Hinton.
All right, Jeffrey Hinton. So I guess let's establish first what neural networks are.
So neural networks are now the de facto way of doing machine learning. So we talked a little bit before about the differences between AI and machine learning, and now I'm...
Oh, no, jump.
All right, one moment, everyone.
Yeah, no, this is stressful.
This guy's gonna kill me as I'm... Hey, you. Great.
Nice.
So we talked before about the difference between AI and machine learning and how really machine learning is a part of AI. Well, neural networks are an algorithm used by machine learning. So there are many different ones. There are decision tables and there are SVMs and all sorts of stuff. But neural networks were really made popular by Jeffrey Hinton, who effectively created deep learning. So when we say deep, we mean that there are lots of layers to the neural network. And his approaches really kind of popularized that idea. And so the benefit of a deep neural network is that every layer that you go from the very first one, you get more and more and more abstract thought. So the bot is able to connect variables in a data set that you would not, with your human brain, have ever realized were connected through largely correlation, which is maybe a benefit or a curse. And so because he was able to kind of tie all these things together, he effectively rejuvenated the idea of machine learning. So it was originally used maybe in the 70s, early 80s. It effectively died, and then it was resurrected by his research.
So what's your Nobel Prize equivalent in computer science?
The Turing Award.
Turing Award, and he's presumably a winner of that?
Yes, definitely is.
He's a big deal. All right, if you want to see the numbers, here's what 5-4 betting and 1.3K versus 780.
So, Jeffrey Hinton is sort of famous because of his work with DeepMind at Google, and so he is kind of a personality in the zeitgeist, I guess, of tech. in a way that Donald Knuth, even though he's like maybe equally influential, will never be able to reach. He's,
Yeah.
he doesn't have the Iron Man persona.
That's fair. Sonic 2 was a good movie. Don't get me wrong. I just wanted the drowning sound effect because it's embedded in my brain from. I watched the Sonic 2 movie through a TikTok live video. Not my brightest moment. I don't know. You got to see the movie. We're going to count it. All right. Arthur of Hyrule redeemed Take a Drink. Cheers, Arthur. Thank you for joining us. We're glad you could spend some time with us on a Wednesday night to talk machine learning and AI while playing some Super Mario World. Oh, man. We have a couple questions to catch up on. I will get them. First time chat from PJs. PJs, welcome to the stream. Thank you for joining us. All right. So scrolling backwards. Sumpie Greg, not sure if this is appropriate to ask, but what is a feature you would think... Oh, sorry. What is a feature you think would be cool to add to Program 7 as a personal project?
So let me contextualize for folks who are not in the class.
Yeah.
So Programming Assignment 7 was out of the blue, recreate Pokemon Blue or Red. So sort of like your first, I don't want to say your first real programming assignment, but like the first greenfield kind of programming assignment where you don't have a lot of rails on it. And so can you fulfill these kind of basic requirements for the game? And to be honest, we cut out a lot of the game, right? And so some of those things were catching monsters, for example. So essentially the game in its programming assignment number 7 incarnation was Dungeons and Dragons, but with Pokemon, right? Like you have a party of Pokemon, you fight stuff, and then you're done. So in my mind, the catch aspect, which was offered as a bonus, was part of that. I think... trying to go from different maps to additional maps, right? So we kind of constrained it to, a 20 by 20 or a 10 by 10 grid. But you imagine like a full scale game, you have lots and lots and lots of 20 by 20 grids. And so trying to incorporate all those maps together is a very non-trivial task that would be interesting to do kind of as a personal project. And other stuff like legendaries, right? So a major portion of the game is fighting a monster you can only ever fight once, right? And if you choose to kill it, then it's dead. But if you choose to catch it, then it's not. And so there's lots of strategy around saving before you encounter the thing, because what happens if you get its health too low and yada, yada, yada. And in the course version of the game, you didn't even have a save option. So there's lots of additional kind of features that you have to implement before people would actually be satisfied playing that part of the game, if that makes sense.
Faithful Fairy, y'all made Pokemon as an assignment? Wow.
That's maybe a glorified. It was certainly Pokemon adjacent.
A broad approximation of Pokemon.
Yes.
All right, Oven Johnson has redeemed request a factoid. So keep in mind, these could be personal, they could be professional, they could be scientific, they could be video game related. Any factoid, any knowledge bomb you would like to drop on the audience, now is the time to do it.
I really wish I wouldn't have slept on this part.
I'm sorry I didn't remind you on this, because we did predictions like last night, but we did not.
Crap. Okay, one factoid is I'm really bad at Mario. That is definitely one of them. Let's see. Man, I hope this is not the like make or break aspect of the stream, because man,
I don't know. We'll find out. We're doing okay with viewers. We'll see how the YouTube video goes.
So factoids, man.
What's that side detour you do in class regularly just to say this is a cool thing you should know about?
Man, crap. So many of those. Okay, so here we go. Here's one.
All right.
So maybe less factoid, more like random story that we'll find a factoid in. How about that?
All right.
There's this huge kind of controversial thing in computer science education, actually, around people getting a programming assignment and then going online and then essentially stealing the solution to that programming assignment from Google or Chegg or Stack Overflow or whatever. And the prevailing feeling from students is that there's no harm in doing that, because really, like, the perception in the sort of common societal view of software engineering is that we're a bunch of people that like solve problems by going to Google and then Googling the problem and then just using the thing. So I actually know a person who
I did not
copied.
know there was a one up there.
That was my factoid, right?
There's the one up right there.
To actually know a person who was tasked with fixing a bug at a company. I won't like say any names because it's really mean. Because I guess this is going to go on YouTube, and I don't want to necessarily shame that person. But they did exactly that, right? So they went on Stack Overflow, they copied the solution to a problem, not necessarily understanding the solution to the problem, and they accidentally took down an entire international financial system in doing that for about 48 hours. And so they were actually asked to fix the problem on the back end, and it was extremely not great situation. So the factoid is it actually does matter if you take random code off the internet and pass that off as the solution to a problem in class.
It could matter.
It likely will matter. Yeah.
That's fair. All right. Arthur of Hyrule wants to know Genesis or SNES?
SNES. So
That was your flavor.
I attempted to get a Genesis and was thwarted at every turn at doing so. From whatever reason. I actually did buy a Dreamcast on Black Friday sale when Dreamcasts were a thing, and I bought literally one game, and it was Phantasy Star Online. Phantasy Star Online for Sega Dreamcast. I'm lying. I also got Marvel vs. Capcom. So I have an entire system for those two games, and that's it. And so the claim to fame for Dreamcast, right? The memory card had like a 6x6 display on it, and you could get like weird pets for it. It was like a whole thing. I did not know
that. No, I remember the display and the controller, right? It had the open box, and Cuddle Puppy. Those are 2 of the 5 games for the Dreamcast, or the games I had for the Dreamcast.
Yeah,
the Dreamcast bombed pretty hard, right? If I remember correctly.
Yeah, I loved it for what it was, and it was a machine for playing Phantasy Star Online and Marvel vs. Capcom.
That was the Echo the Dolphin, right? Came out for Dreamcast. That was one of the early. That was Sega. All right, catching up on some questions. Favorite beer you've had? Favorite whiskey you've had? Do you have strong beer or whiskey opinions?
So my favorite beer ever is 850 from Proof.
Oh, wow.
Like,
That's
absolutely.
amazing.
Like, and a lot of it is emotional, I think. Like, I remember going to the old Proof. I remember going to the new Proof when it was just like kind of a tiny thing. And my kid, my oldest kid, like listening to live music and like having an 850, and it's like a whole thing.
Yeah.
So in a lot of ways, I love 850 for the same reason that people love Coke. And that says a lot about me, maybe, that I don't want to necessarily say. But that's definitely favorite beer. In terms of whiskey or like bourbon or things like that, I love Old Forester because it's just good. Like, I don't really... A lot of people are like, hey, I can smell the vanilla, and if I hold my breath and count to 4, I sense some sort of synesthesia or whatever, and I definitely can't do that.
Cuddle Puppy. Pabst Blue Ribbon has to be the best beer because it won a blue ribbon. PBR. Oh man.
I mean, yeah, like there's a time and a place.
Yeah, no, 120 years ago, they did in fact win a blue ribbon. I like it.
His arms were out.
Yeah,
That's a bug.
I did not see that. I'll have to go back to the YouTube video.
Yeah,
All right.
review the tape.
PJS wants to know, hey, Dr. Mills, I'm taking your C sharp. Is that how you pronounce
That's it.
C sharp. SQL. It's pronounced sequel.
Sequel.
Okay, and that's historical. Why is that?
Because some dude in a cubicle said it one time,
Said it was
and then
okay.
it made it to the Wikipedia, and then
Follow-up question: GIF or GIF?
I say GIF.
Appropriately.
wrong.
No, I think GIF is correct. That's what the creator decided. Because sequel and C sharp, C hashtag.
C hashtag. I like that
That's what
one a
we'll
lot.
use it. I'm taking your C hashtag class, and you put a lot of emphasis on the difficulty of programming assignment number 3, stating it was a sharp left turn in the course. What makes this assignment so hard? I'm curious.
All right, so this is, I think, a broader educational question than people actually realize. So a lot of computer science education is mired in 1970s kind of design of applications. And so we do a great job of teaching you about algorithms. We do a great job of teaching you about tooling. What we don't necessarily do is teach you a lot about the design of actual full-scale applications. And so what assignment number 3 actually does is forces you to build a UI, which is not a typical thing in the degree program, and then 2, it forces you to make architectural decisions that I don't force on you by giving you requirements. And so one large piece of software engineering is going to a client or listening to a client and then trying to pull their requirements out of them as if you were trying to extract teeth. And that is a large portion.
Oh, God. Down the
If you're going
drain.
to fail hard. And that's it.
Do you know how to fly in this? Or you can bounce up and...
Yeah, that's the you bounce too early and then you're just
Yeah, if you press down and then on the way down, press backwards, you'll float back up. Brutal.
But yeah, that's why you're forced to do things that you aren't necessarily forced to do elsewhere. The requirements are hand wavy, and add that to the fact you have to build a UI you're not familiar with in a language you're not familiar with. It's total immersion from a software perspective.
Cuddle puppy lesson learned: if someone wants to be my client, I should knock their teeth out.
Again, learning things you don't necessarily want, but you taught. Yeah.
So that's interesting. Do you tell them it's the hardest assignment, or do you tell them it's an unusual assignment?
So I didn't used to say that.
Yeah.
So I used to, say like this is certainly a thing. I was getting too greedy.
Yeah.
And this the last few semesters I took a different tact, and I used fear to gain attention. Last semester didn't really work out, but maybe this one it did. We'll find.
So deciding fear versus inspiration versus...
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a little bit of a Pavlovian, and so you asked me a question before about like ethics and whatever, and I told you that mine was going to be a soft answer, and maybe I accidentally walked into a situation where the actual answer is not. I don't know. But.
No worries. All right, catching up on some question. Oven Johnston wants to know, how much would it take for you to rewrite Roller Coaster Tycoon using x86 assembly and minimal C? What about Pokemon Red, Blue, Yellow? That is a hell of a question.
I don't actually know that there's that much money in circulation. Like, it would have to be such a hilarious amount of money that I would be able to retire afterward and never do anything else. And by never do anything else, I don't mean, like, not work again. I mean, like, not function as a member of society again. Like...
How long would that take you? Just from scratch, sitting down by yourself?
Years. Just, like a long time.
I mean, the original Sims was one person, wasn't it? Or something like that?
Yeah, but I think that they also use higher level abstraction.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they didn't
so
do it from C.
yeah,
Oh my God.
you would have to do a lot.
Hey,
I'm really bad at flying,
at
apparently.
least they didn't ask you to write it from Fortran.
So funny story. Maybe I will save this for the next factoid.
All right, somebody request a factoid because we've stumbled upon it.
Dang.
Well, let's follow up on this though. What's your favorite programming language?
So C#, 100% is my favorite programming language. I think it's a great intermediary between something like C++. It allows you to take the training wheels, so to speak, off, so you can pretend like it's C++ if you want. But over the years, it's also gained a lot of features like Python has or whatever. So I think it's a really good intermediary.
Oh man, Oven Johnson and Arthur have requested factoids.
So poor Oven Johnson already knows this. So like this is maybe not a factoid for him.
Yeah. Well, do this one for Arthur then.
His 300. So my first language is actually Fortran because I was trained in the math department and not a CS department. So when I was in undergrad, I was listless and just kind of absurd. I started in math and journalism, which is a horrible combination. And then left journalism because it was too easy, which, I mean, look at 2022. That's a hilarious statement to make. I don't know. You get to be young and stupid one time, and that was mine. So I ended up in 14 different STEM majors and ended up in math because that was like the intersection of the Venn diagram. So I went to grad school at Florida State in math because of that, and everything was Fortran. And so you either were in MATLAB or Maple or something or Fortran. All the cool kids were in Fortran, so I got really good at Fortran and then tried to go to CS. And when I said I knew Fortran really well, they laughed a lot. And so here we are.
Do they still use Fortran?
In math, I have to believe they do.
Wow.
It would be very hard to migrate away. So I actually have a friend from math grad school who works for the Navy, and I know for a fact that most of their code is still written in Fortran.
Wow.
Overcorrected.
Okay, Golden Eagle. Chris, not to ruin your night, but USM is currently losing to Ole Miss in baseball. That is all. That's personal?
That's personal. So before I was at Florida State, I was
This is your second factoid. Drop this knowledge bomb.
Oh, there we go. So before I was at Florida State, I was at University of Southern Mississippi. And I actually kind of screwed up and left University of Southern Mississippi and went to Mississippi State. And then went back to Southern Mississippi to graduate. So my undergrad is actually from two different universities that kind of hate each other. And Ole Miss is the only state school, kind of PWI state school that I did not go to. But a lot of my friends did. And so I have a special hatred for Ole Miss. And here we are, losing to Ole Miss.
Oh, and your students know that apparently. That's awesome. All right. Faithful Fairy, my grad school boss asked our collaborator to plot some helical lines, and he sent back Fortran code. Then my boss asked me to write that in Excel. That's fair.
Yeah, so we had a person join I2X not very long ago. That was their number one programming language was Visual Basic, or so VBA ActionScript, actually. And that's the scripting language for Excel. And I was absolutely astounded by the number of things a person could do with Excel in that language. And if I were to pick a language as esoteric as Fortran, it would definitely be VBA.
All right, we should throw another prediction up because we're running out of time. It's almost 10 o'clock already.
Oh, man.
Which one do you want? You have 3 left. No pressure.
Okay, definitely the second one.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, get your standard internet units ready. We're going to throw up another prediction right now. If you're not clicking follow, click follow. That'll give you more internet units to spend on things like questing factoids or making us drink alcohol or unlocking emotes or whatever you want to do with them on our channel. We don't have a whole lot of options. We should probably do like a 10,000 point, like take a shot of vodka or something. But right
Yeah,
now,
it's sort of the Pepsi equivalent of buying an F-17.
yeah, some
thing.
Pepsi points. Yes. All right. The earliest attempts at natural language processing, was that in the 1960s or the 1970s? And so we talked a little bit about natural language processing earlier. Do you want to recap what that means?
Natural language processing is effectively you take input from English or German or some contextual, so non-context free language, and you try to teach a robot effectively what to do with that input. So some of it is sentiment analysis, right? Is the user mad or not? Some of it is intent analysis, right? So what is the user actually trying to look for? Some of it is just machine translation. So can I change the natural language to German or whatever, or the non-natural language to German or whatever, or Google Translate, right? So can I take English and make it French or whatever using a machine? And all of that kind of is natural language processing.
All right, so earliest attempts at natural language processing, was it 1960s or 1970s? You guys have about a minute left. Spend your standard internet units.
I'm taking my ball and going home from the haunted house.
Yeah.
Abused me quite a bit.
You got a secondary exit here if you want.
Yeah, but Bobby Brown lives in that haunted house. And
So you should have done the yellow block. This might have made life easier.
yeah,
Note that somebody beats this game in 41 seconds.
yeah, I know. It has brutalized me in ways that
Now, are you feeling better for having played this, or worse?
I knew it was coming, and I still jumped into it instead of over it.
Man, do you remember the first time seeing that bullet pop out of the screen?
It was terrifying.
Yeah. Changed the game entirely. All right, earliest attempts at natural language processing. Chris, what is the answer, 1960s or 1970s?
It's 1960s. So this seems like a really minutia kind of situation. But if you think about the difference between 1960 and 1970 or 1965 and 1975, they're quite big in terms of computation power and all of that kind of stuff. And so even at that very early stage, there was a natural language a model that was intended to be a therapist called Eliza, and it would tell you effectively what kind of things you could do to make your outlook on life better. And so, interestingly, this was not machine learning. It was actually called an expert system, and so it's rules-based. But there were tons of other kind of adaptations of the same kind of model that did things like dose antibiotics or dose other drugs or make fairly minute medical diagnoses. And so this kind of stuff has been around for a really, really long time.
1960s.
Yeah, so to kind of contextualize that, my mother was born in 1964. And that was roughly the same year that Eliza went live.
So Apple IIe came out, what was that, 79, something like that?
Right. And so a lot of this is governmental level computing power.
1960s, the first attempts at it. So congratulations, anyone that said 1960s, which is 64% of the betting. Congratulations on your standard internet units. All right, Bobby 15% of 1500 wants to know, when doing something like optical character recognition, how do you get just a singular character out of an image containing multiple characters so you can classify which character it is? And so maybe break down that question before answering it.
Yeah, so I'll contextualize this as a similar but maybe seemingly different kind of problem. So one of the very first applications of computer visualization was to solve what's called the handwriting problem. And the problem is I have a person who's written a whole bunch of stuff on a notepad, and their H may not look like a font H, right? And how do I determine if their H is an H or if it's an F or if it's a whatever? And this was really, really hard to solve. And the way that OCR works is kind of based on the same ideas, right? So what you kind of do is you try to draw a box around each individual character by not crossing colored in pixels effectively. So what you try to do is isolate an area of interest, and you sort of blanketly assume that that area of interest contains a single character.
All right. So that's recognizing a singular character out of an image containing multiple characters.
Correct. And
So you
then
can classify.
something like OCR would then attempt to find how many bounding boxes there are in the document, and then it would solve that same problem over all of them. And so if you think about OCR, it's really like a watered down version of the handwriting problem, because you are confined to a font. So every H in the document looks the same as every other H. If you were to try to handwrite that document, you may think your H's look the same, but from a pixel to pixel perspective, they definitely do not.
Yeah. It's a fun problem. Fun, I imagine, very hard problem. All right, Cuddle Puppy, 100 channel points equals keg stand of Everclear.
I'm too old.
No. For the keg stand or the Everclear. Jeez. Yeah, I'll settle for scotch. With that said, Don Carr requested tequila for her drink of choice during Ask a Scientist Gaming, which is kind of fun. We had some really nice white clear tequila, so that wasn't too bad. Guess you just got to pace yourself.
Yes, I am. You got to know your limitations. I think that's part of being an adult. Here I am.
Recognizing your limitations and the fact we have to get up and go to work tomorrow.
Office hours at 8.
Office hours at 8. But man, sleeping until 7 is a luxury when you have a 2 and a 5-year-old.
You're not wrong.
Oh man. So we have construction going on. We have both of them sleeping in the same room. So it's not just one waking up, it's both. No matter
And
what.
both of mine sleep in the same room. And yeah, it's not an ideal scenario.
Yeah, so it goes. All right, we just crossed the 10 o'clock mark. Joining me today is Dr. Chris Mills. He's an expert in computer science, machine learning, artificial intelligence, and actually applying that to solving problems. Like companies come to him and say, we have a problem, can you solve it with machine learning and AI? Yeah, the quote from your bio was think Jarvis, but with, legal or medical or whatever things.
So yeah, we're trying to do, yeah.
If you have questions, throw them in chat. We are happy to answer them, or at least talk about what the answer could be. Keg stand of Everclear.
Yeah, and to be clear, right, artificial intelligence and computer science are large enough fields that you can't necessarily be an expert in every part. And so I think that's a huge misnomer in general, right? So as you go through grad school, and I'm sure that you experience the same thing, nobody is necessarily an expert in chemistry, right?
Yeah.
Things become increasingly niche, and that allows you to find even more interesting problems that you didn't even really contemplate as problems before. And I think that's one of the most interesting things of science, right? They get so deep that it's really hard to be good at everything.
Well, I was talking to developmental psychologist Sarah Hart about this because we have these conversations, and then we are very particular about what we're willing to say. And so within a certain narrow line, we're really confident in what our answers are going to be. But if you go slightly outside of that lane, it's like, no, I don't know that answer. I'm not an expert. But if you go even farther outside of that lane, sure, I'll answer your question. It's like there's this uncanny valley of expertise.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly it. And some of it is, oh crap. And some of it is, you don't want to get so close to a correct answer that you lead somebody astray that could have otherwise found the right answer, right? There's all of this sort of slippery slope stuff that happens.
Yeah, well, I think it has to do with knowing enough of what you don't know, and you have the expertise in that domain.
Dunning-Kruger,
yeah,
is definitely a thing.
Yeah, but when you go outside of that domain, sure, whatever, I'll answer questions. Cuddle Puppy. I disagree. I saw a movie where an FBI agent spoke 10 languages and was a master of all hard sciences and arts. What movie was that, but also true?
So Criminal Minds or whatever, it does a really great job of this. I'm trying to remember if that's that's actually the show or not. I don't think that it is. There's one where there's a person who's marketed as a savant in the show that has 6 different PhDs or whatever, and he's 18, and you think to yourself, my God, it took me 6 years to get one. I can't imagine being 65 or whatever and having 10. Can we swap to something that isn't
yes.
me
what do you want to do?
Can we do Defender, maybe?
Defender, Yes, let's do that. So we're going to switch over to Nintendo, which is that guy. Yeah, you have about a half hour before we bust out NARC.
All right, sounds good.
So we're going back.
That haunted house is very haunted. I just
Weird.
want to be...
Transitioning back to 1988 and Nintendo Entertainment System. Is there a story behind this one?
So this is my dad's favorite game.
Is your dad watching now?
Almost certainly not.
You send him a link?
I'm not sure he would know how to get on Twitch, to be
That's
completely
fair.
honest. Is it this guy?
Yep, Nintendo, yep.
Sweet.
The original, this is a true original Nintendo controller.
All right. Yeah, you can feel the vintage
Yep.
in this, and the fact that you have to press start to start. I like it.
So it's got...
Oh,
got
I
some
just used all my bombs off the back. All right, sweet.
So I don't know if I put Game Genie codes in this, but we can definitely add them if you want them.
I love that it has the obnoxious sound for every fire.
Phoenix 3, this is the Chris Mills fan club dream come true. You playing video games and talking science? I mean, to be fair, it's also our dream come true. With kids, we don't get to do this often, so any excuse to get drunk, play video games, and talk science, I will take it.
That was dirty. They beamed me into an enemy. So this is much more high impact than poor Robotron. You can see this is like a... So the point is you're supposed to keep all these weird aliens from stealing your people off the floor. Like that
is
guy.
What it is? I don't
But
remember this game.
you can accidentally blow up the person too, like I just did. So did I save him? Yes. Did I also murder him? Also yes.
I think I already put infinite lives in, and maybe infinite bombs. So you might
Thank
be okay.
God.
These games were unforgiving. For those of you that don't know, this was also an arcade game where the goal was to steal as much money as possible, as quickly as possible. So they were ruthless. There's no easy setting on these. Cuddle Puppy. Literally all the CSI and Criminal Mind TV show star once, and generation geniuses who choose to get paid $50,000 a year as an FBI agent or detective. Yes, it's very true.
Yeah, I mean, if I had 10 PhDs, what else would I do?
That's true. 10 PhDs. I mean, so that's one of my questions as well. If you had to go back, you've done a lot of disciplines and you got your PhD in computer science. Like, what would you choose as a PhD path?
Psychology.
Psychology.
100%. Yeah, so the reason why I chose math, like initially, and the reason why I chose chemistry and physics, oh, I saved the dude. Come on. All right.
Nice.
Initially, it was because I felt like they were harder, and by virtue of being harder, they were more fruitful.
Yeah.
But it turns out that, like, over time, you start talking to people, and you realize that people are the most complicated thing on Earth. Like, they have all of these like weird nuances and like, yeah, C++ code can be complicated. C++ code doesn't have 35 years of insecurity that they're throwing at you for like random reasons. And so psychology, I think, would be interesting just from the perspective of like trying to understand one of the most complicated things, even though it doesn't seem at the moment as an undergrad very complicated.
I mean, have you thought about so you have all these undergraduate projects, machine learning, AI and stuff. Have you thought about reaching out to other departments and say, what's a thing you'd like to solve? Because I'm sure psychology has that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so one of the kind of unfortunate experiences that I've had at FSU is that immediately after I started, COVID happened. So my very first semester was fall 2019. Everything kind of seemed cool, and I was trying to take the time to like catch my breath and like, okay, sweet, I actually work here now. Like, holy crap, I have an office. And then like, 12 weeks later, you're like evacuating your office to like do some YouTube videos. And so
try to learn OBS.
Yeah, frantically trying to figure out how a person puts a thing on YouTube. Like that was a whole field.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think there's a lot of interdisciplinary stuff that needs to happen. And there's this feeling, I think, at at the kind of even dean's level that a lot of research has to happen at the graduate level, because undergraduates are somehow like not prepared. But I approach that the same way that I approach math education in America. We don't teach linear algebra in sixth grade, not because it's not a sixth grade skill, it's because we don't have sixth grade educators that can teach you linear algebra. And so by virtue of that situation, we manifest this sort of like math phobia that people talk about. And so I am happy to engage in undergraduate research at any level. And yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of work to do in psychology or in computational chemistry, right? That would be really fruitful either at the undergraduate or the graduate level.
Yeah, speaking of the sixth grade linear algebra, so one thing I always question is like when you first do your like times table or your addition tables, it's always x times y equals box. I don't know, well, let's do 3 times 9 equals box. Why don't they just put an x there? just put an x there and then x equals your answer. Linear algebra. Like,
exactly. Yeah. And so there are lots of like really weird things like that, right? And so there are ideas where instead of teaching multiplication tables, we teach group theory, right?
Yeah.
And so, like from an abstract perspective, what is multiplication? And so I think maybe we're not ready for that, but we're definitely ready for some kind of change that normalizes complexity. It doesn't necessarily make it scary.
That's fair. You mentioned groups. Should we do this prediction?
Sure.
Let's do one. We have 2 left, so we better do one now and one in about a half an hour. All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you're not following, click the follow button because we are going to do a prediction right now, and you can standard internet units and have bragging rights if you get this question right. Note that you are on Ask a Scientist Gaming Honor Code, where you cannot cheat and look up the answer on Google. Phoenix, thank you for the follow, and thank you for the first time chat. Welcome to the stream. One of the members of your fan club, which is fun. All right, we're going to throw a prediction up there right now. Bet as many standard internet units as you like. Neural networks resemble what math structure? Is it groups or graphs? And this is quite a bit. You need to know what neural networks are. You also need to know what groups are and what graphs are. But if you know those answers, you can make this prediction. Even if you don't know what those are, make a prediction now because these points are not particularly meaningful. These are just for pride as well as making us drink alcohol and, I don't know, make a request to factoids. So throw your answer in there right now. Is it groups or graphs? So I actually teach group theory in graduate course in organic chemistry.
That's fantastic.
It's mathematically elegant, and we use it to like describe vibrational modes and electronic transitions and all sorts of stuff. It's really what I have to teach the students first, though, is that group theory was not invented by chemists. We just hijacked 150-year-old mathematics to do our own stuff.
And so computer science does the same thing with category theory, right? So you can tape all of type theory, and it's actually just category theory by another name. And so, yeah, we hijack a lot of that same thing.
All right, you have about a minute left. Is it neural networks resemble what math structure? Is it groups or graphs? In the meantime, Cuddle Puppy says psychology over sociology. I mean, both are complex problems.
Yeah, so yes, they're complex problems. I'm more interested in psychology because I'm more interested in the unit than the system of units, right? So sociology, in my mind, right, is the complexity of all these different people working together. And before I could even fathom trying to understand that, you have to understand each individual like unit. And that's where, in my mind, psychology comes in.
Sorry, I'm changing our stream. I forgot to change our game name. All right, so prediction is closed. Neural networks most closely resemble what? Groups or graphs? What is your answer, Chris?
Oh, they most, it's graphs. Most resemble graphs.
All right, so almost everyone got that right. Cuddle Puppy, I'm assuming you bet against the stream because it would have been a 65-1 payout if you got groups right. But graphs, seems like everyone understood. That's just something computer scientists should know.
I think it's because graphs are mathematically easier to understand, right? So as a person who teaches groups, they're fairly abstract kind of things. And so graphs much more closely resemble things like tree structures that computer scientists are much more like kind of in tune with. And so literally what neural networks are is basically just graphs that have lots and lots and lots of leaves at each individual layer of a tree. And so that's basically a deep neural network. It's how high your tree is.
Network tree. That was a Goodwill Hunting scene, right, on the chalkboard.
Yes.
That was a network. That's kind of fun. So yeah, 98% of the people, or what they bet towards graphs, got it correct. So congratulations, those of you that picked graphs for that.
You got
prediction.
1 unit or something because.
Yeah, they got a 1.02 to 1 payout.
Excellent.
2% return on investment on that one. Okay, as a former math tutor, they have actually started doing similar things, 3 times 9 equals x, in school to teach multiplication and division at earlier times. That's awesome.
Excellent.
Like, just like demystify it.
Exactly.
It's fear. What's crazy is I learned this, so I care a lot about testing theory, so I use classical testing theory and item response theory and like Roche modeling to like analyze tests. And I started looking at things like the order answer matters, or the question you get, question order matters. Changing one word can change outcomes by 5%. But I also learned that if on a math test, if they ask gender as the first question, it will drop female performance on a math exam by something like 5 to 10%. So just by someone defining what gender they are at the start of the exam changes the outcome that dramatically.
That's wild.
Isn't that terrifying?
That is actually
like it goes back to the sociology, psychology aspect and complexity of like you screw the measurement up by even doing it, and it's amazing.
Yeah, and usually I advocate for no fear, and I actually stooped to using fear in the C# class. So it's we'll see how. Yeah, I mean, eventually everything becomes a tool, I guess.
Yeah. Cuddle puppy. A person is smart, people are dumb, panicky, dangerous animals, and you know it. To quote Men in Black, psychology versus sociology. That's fair.
That is extremely fair.
All right, Phoenix, my dear friend in my internship did a huge project on neural networks. And I got to review it for her before she presented. She taught me so much in her funky 10-minute presentation. That's awesome.
Yeah, and my kind of point about math education in general is that if you take the fear out of it, and you just like use familiar language to talk about things, you can really talk about things like groups or categories or whatever in a way that people actually understand and aren't necessarily terrified of.
Even that, like when I try to break down group theory, it's like there's 4 rules that define something as a group, and they're not hard rules. So like you can do it with addition versus multiplication. One's a group and one's not a group, and it's because they don't have, things like closure and identity and like
exactly. And you have names like a billion groups, but it's really just that they're commutative.
Yeah,
right?
are they symmetric or not?
Yeah, it's there's all these layers of complexity added on, really because of history more than anything. And so I think we could do society a huge favor by maybe simplifying some of that.
Yeah. I mean, it's the ivory tower issue, right? Like, people like feeling smart, and they like imposing that on other people, and that sucks.
Yeah, especially if you're not in the ivory tower.
Yeah. No, it's one of the reasons I like this stream, because it's such a humanizing to suck at a video game while drinking alcohol. Like,
and suck I have. So.
I mean, we can wax intellectual all day, but the bottom line is Chris did not do well at Super Mario World. And your students know that now. So you've been humanized. Taken off your ivory tower.
Definitely.
For a moment. All right, Cuddle Puppy. Congratulations to those of you that stole my 10 channel points. So I'm curious how Twitch does this, because it had to split 10 channel points among 7 people. Does it round down? Because I don't think you should do that in gambling, right? You shouldn't round it up. Should we do a prediction on NARC? You're about 13 minutes away from NARC. Are you pumped? You ready?
Yeah, I'm getting all of my like twitchiness.
It's relaxing.
On Twitch.
If you have, what was it? What was the alcohol threshold of programming?
Oh my God,
Balmer, the Balmer.
1.1?
1 point. I don't think you're there yet.
That's gonna be hard.
The Balmer, what did they call it?
The Balmer Peak.
Balmer Peak?
Yeah, we're gonna need way more internet currency. We need a bigger boat.
The Balmer Peak. Pop culture dictionary. Blood alcohol concentration between 0.129 and 0.138. So I thought about getting a breathalyzer for Ask a Scientist Gaming just for fun, but realized that's probably a terrible idea if somebody takes it as a challenge.
That's fair. That's fair. That was horrible. That was actually the worst possible outcome.
So when was the last time you played this game?
I was in ninth grade.
Ninth grade. Wow.
It's been quite some time.
It's been a while. I prefer a blood alcohol level of 1.0. Sure. Blood alcohol of unity. Phoenix. I'm sure that also plays into how girls are less inclined to raise their hands in class to answer or ask questions. And it starts manifesting early in development. Yeah. No, there's... Yeah.
So maybe another factoid is that my wife actually got her PhD before I did, which is her claim to fame in some ways. But she got her PhD in educational attainment of STEM degrees in women. And so, like, that's 100% a thing, right? So, like, sort of classical conditioning of, like, girls to be more willing to please in certain circumstances and not necessarily, like, raise questions or whatever. And what is science if not asking a bunch of questions, right? And so there's a lot there. And so I hope... that research that my wife has kind of like backed into and added to helps that situation some, because you're absolutely right.
So what does she do now?
She is she is the director of student success in the IR department at FSU. So she does a lot of the reporting of student metrics and that kind of thing, and trying to understand how to help students succeed. And this is a huge part of that, right? You would be stupid to try to help students and not recognize the disparity in how women are treated in STEM.
So she sees the DFWs by race, ethnicity, gender, and that's, no, that's chemistry, math, physics. We all have problems with those numbers, and it's not a trivial difference, and it has very little to do with like experience or background or previous training. There are some intrinsic biases. I think that's the huge thing. And so and I don't want to say uneducated, because I don't mean it in the general sense, but a person who doesn't necessarily read stats for what they are could really take some negative things away from those numbers. But if you contextualize them in society at large, it's very, very hard to recondition yourself to ask questions when you've for a decade been told not to. And so that's a huge thing. I mean, so you and your wife have probably had conversations, like it's pretty well known at this point that traditional lecture format is not effective. Like Socratic method is not necessarily the best way to teach. Active learning, flipped classroom is where the trend is going. Is that, are you implementing those? Are you leaning that way?
So I kind of try to split the difference. And so you're right. Me and my wife have lots of heated debates about like the relative effectiveness of classroom procedure, which is like the nerdiest thing that people could possibly fight about. But here we are. And DFW rates actually drive a lot of that, unfortunately.
So if you're not familiar, DFW is D and F, or withdrawal from a course. And those disproportionately affect women and minorities and first-generation college students, despite they have the same ability to achieve. It's weird.
Yeah, and I didn't necessarily want to get super controversial, but my viewpoint on DFW is that it's sort of a reductive kind of idea, right? And so if you fail a class one time, I think as society, we've kind of pattern that as a rote failure. Like you failed organic chemistry one time, so you're not cut out to be a chemist, and that is not at all the way that things work, right? You learn from failure. Maybe you had a bad semester or whatever. So DFW itself, I think, is a little bit questionable.
Oh, you blew a person.
I know. Like, as I'm saying controversial things,
Yeah.
shot a person in space. This is maybe not great. But if you add in things like DFW for like specific minorities or like women in STEM, it becomes extremely problematic because they are fighting against like unseen forces that you can't necessarily, I just did it again, you can't necessarily quantify, right? And so it becomes very difficult to justify the difference. And so that's a huge kind of thing.
So what happens if they get all the people? Do you lose?
You do.
Yeah. K Golden Eagle, as a museum educator, flipped classroom is the buzzword turned concept right now. Yeah, I've had several developmental psychologists rant about flipped classroom.
Rant.
So I don't know if you're familiar about the difference, but flipped classroom, there's this a tendency in, I mean, this is K through 12. It's reaching them now, where it's essentially you watch a video at home and then do worksheets in the classroom. That's the flipped aspect of it. But there's some research that says there's no advantage to it and it can be detrimental. And so I think the current, I don't know, paradigm of most effective teaching method is much more of an active classroom. This idea where it's just not you working alone, but you working collaboratively with people and you brainstorming and troubleshooting and think, pair, share. And yeah, the I've heard many rants about flipped classrooms and how it's BS right now. So it is important to differentiate between flipped classroom and active learning. Faithful Fairy, a follow-up on that. Computer science should be easier to do active learning, right? It's much easier to do on-hand CS demonstrations than chemistry.
So,
I mean, do you have a room full of computers, or students bring their own?
So typically, we expect people to bring their own computers. We could like get a classroom with computers, but we can't necessarily get a classroom with 200 computers, right? So that becomes an issue. So I'm going to flip the question a little bit and talk about something as if I was an old fogey, right? So this is Chris Mills, Get Off My Lawn kind of segment.
Do it. You are playing an old-ass game, right?
Yeah, so this is the game from 1965. I just killed another person in space, so I'm not super popular right now.
Yeah.
So we've had a huge problem with attendance. So one of the like core assumptions of a flipped classroom is that people are going to watch videos and then come and learn from those videos in the classroom. If the person never comes back to the classroom, a flipped classroom is effectively a YouTube channel. And so it's really, really hard to attain learning outcomes or even like measure learning outcomes when you are tied hand and foot to a video that's supposed to teach everybody something from the very beginning of the lecture, right? So there has to be some remediation in the lecture at minimum, because computer science isn't math and computer science isn't English. Everybody doesn't necessarily come into college with the same background. And so even chemistry, right? Most people take high school chemistry. Most people don't take high school computer science. And so we could come into a classroom of 150 people, maybe 75 of which have never actually used a computer programming language at all, and trying to write a video that reaches those students in the same way that it reaches a student who's had 2 semesters of AP computer science and a whole bunch of boot camps. It's really, really hard to do. So just a logistical issue is trying to flip a classroom in a meaningful way. Most of the time what happens is you have a crappy flip classroom and the person who already knows more is going to not show up. And if you do a traditional sort of Socratic kind of method, you can recognize that person rolling their eyes in the back of the room, and you can say, oh, well, this is the 150% of this topic, and kind of rein them back in. You can't do that on YouTube. And so there are tons of issues there. And I think ultimately it goes upstream, right? If we had better secondary education around computer science, we wouldn't necessarily need that. kind of
Yeah, I think that's one of the rationales behind the more active learning approach. Like if you have think, pair, share, even the student who's super advanced, if they have to teach it to someone else, they'll learn it better, and the person being taught will learn it. And so if you can design, and that's the hard part, designing activities where people that are both advanced and, remedial can learn from that activity, that is your best case scenario. Then everybody wins.
Yeah, in the computer science realm, I think the idea of plagiarism really like impacts that in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
because unlike math, you can't necessarily generate an infinite number of computer science questions that look the same but are actually different.
Yeah.
And so a lot of there's a lot of pushback to group work and that kind of thing, largely because you don't necessarily want to grade a student or measure a student's learning outcomes based on their group,
Yeah.
because very likely they could be like a standard deviation away from the average of that student group, and then you're not doing that student any favors by passing them on to the next class only to be like mauled by that topic.
Yeah, that makes sense. Cuddle puppy, more lighthearted. I was hoping flipping the classroom meant the lights were on the floor and the desks were on the ceiling.
I would 100% do that.
Back that.
I would absolutely do that.
All right. K Golden Eagle. I think the success of flipped classroom is dependent on the field. It works decently well in history if there's a long text or primary source they need to read in advance. I mean, that's what I'm really excited about this, and I've dove into this because of my like test analysis stuff I'm really interested in, is that we've learned a lot about like neurobiology and like how people learn and what it requires to store something in long-term memory. And we're seeing this convergence in terms of, neurobiology theory as well as education. And at some point, we're going to know enough to actually understand how people learn. But it's one of the prevailing thoughts is you can't just sit and watch someone do something. It doesn't work. It doesn't actually write neural pathways long term. And so I'm really excited to see how that unfolds in the future, because I do think, there are some aspects of learning that are intrinsic regardless of discipline, but maybe there's some nuance to history versus chemistry versus biology. I really don't know.
And a lot of the sort of like non-active learning, right? So passive learning in terms of like, I'm going to sit around and like watch a person do a thing is AI, right? Like what you're doing is you're learning from that person's pattern of behavior, and having not ever experienced it yourself, you don't necessarily have the same amount of data that you otherwise would have.
Mm-hmm. Group projects are the best and worst experience I've had in college.
Yeah.
C4 sniper, that is 100% true.
And that's kind of a double-edged sword for software engineering education, right? Because if you think about what a software engineer does, you don't go to Microsoft and write your own code at Microsoft. You work in a team of 10 people or 15 people, and by sequestering people in their like own, like personal situation in terms of grading, what you're actually doing is counter-educating them in the larger thing that they're actually like being trained to do.
Yeah.
And so it really is like, it depends, right? Like you have to contextualize the learning experience based on what you're trying to teach the student. And if it's industrial practice, it can't be a sole sort of solitary coding experience.
So how do you do group projects in your class then? Do you like students keep track of notes of code they wrote, or how does that work for you guys?
Yeah, so the way, and we're trying to incorporate more of this, but what we do right now is we have a lab, and the lab is 100% group work, and everything that leads up to that lab is an individual project. And so there are group projects in some courses, so Java has some, whatever. And what you have to do in the group project, like lab experience, is you have to prove your worth to the group. And that actually becomes kind of a part of the process, right? Like, so if you are really good at checking in, right, you can show your git commit history, and it is obvious that you committed code every day for 6 months or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But many people are not very good at committing every day, right? So you have to kind of, from a grading perspective, look at the quality of every commit, right? If a person committed 4 times, but it's 900 classes per commit, okay, great. And so that's a huge sort of like subjective component to the class.
I mean, so do you have a standardized rubric for something like that, or is that there's a lot of subjectivity in that?
We do. So that is actually managed by ABET. So there are a bunch of ABET requirements actually drive those rubrics, and so they're maybe more granular than is reasonable in some cases, because they're clearly like outliers, right? Yeah. And so we do the best that we can in the sort of objective framework that we're given.
That's fair. All right, so we just crossed 10:30. You ready for NARC?
I am so ready.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for some NARC. All right, so this is a speed run. Had every guest on, well, not every guest. We'll say the first 10 or so didn't end up doing it. But we have a timer for you beating this as fast as you can. Are you ready for this? You have infinite lives, infinite bullets, infinite rockets, and you're about to win the war on drugs.
All right, let's do it.
All right, just say no. Exactly. This game was written by Nancy Reagan. Cuddle Puppy predicts 9:05. The current world record in this game is 9 minutes and 24 seconds. The current Ask a Scientist gaming guest record is like 20 minutes. So,
all right, let's do it.
Press start. Let's do this. No pressure. This is just for fun. So go ahead, start. And I will hit the timer as soon as I have a foot pedal timer down here.
Backstory is irrelevant.
Oh no, you're just winning the war on drugs. All right, so you have 2 buttons, but you have 4 commands. If you hold down A, it shoots. If you tap A, it rockets. If you hold down B, it squats. If you tap B, it jumps.
All right, so I'm beating the war on drugs with Morse code. Got it.
Exactly. But I mean, in terms of game programming, I mean, like, you turn two buttons into 4 buttons.
Based this on is ideal.
So go in the door. This game is basically go right and go through doors and pick up keys. Cuddle Puppy, not yet. It's too soon. He doesn't need to know. This is our perennial favorite on Ask the Scientist Gaming. In fact, we have 2 emotes dedicated to NARC. And these guys are flashers or something. All right.
I'm pretty sure I just picked up a pipe bomb. Everything's fine.
It might have been bullets. Is that thing? So that's money.
Great.
And you want that card. That was bullets. I think this is a bag of cocaine, but I don't remember.
Love it. All right, we're getting it.
So go right, pick up that red card. So those are the keys to get you through doors. All right, now you go right and find a door. Anyone just joining us at the Scientist Gaming, mediocre gameplay, expert level science. Chris Mills is now playing NARC, who's winning the war on drugs as we speak, but also during that is happy to answer any questions you have on computer science, artificial intelligence, machine learning, natural language processing. He is happy to answer any of it, and we're happy to discuss anything that comes up.
I was trying to stop getting mauled by dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right.
I told you we were going to shoot dogs tonight.
Yeah, I mean...
it came to fruition. Cocaine should increase your move speed. That's true. We should reprogram this game. Make a mod where every time you pick up a bag of cocaine, you walk faster. Oh no, I didn't have Game Genie codes on. Oh, we got to start over. I apologize. So this is one of the games that I speedrun, and you can't use cheat codes. All right. Let's try this again. Sorry, you're starting over on that level.
All right, all good.
That's fine. You got practice. So, all right, press start.
Don't care about your password.
That
guy looks shady.
This is important police work. All right. There we go. Again, we won the war on drugs in 2 minutes. You should deconstruct this game and figure out how to write to RAM for end credits.
So it turns out that this is now the programming assignment in the fall. Congratulations, everyone.
You're gonna have to reverse engineer NARC. So this is a game I speedrun, and my brother started to look into it. He's a
Hashtag no cocaine left behind. There we go.
He's a computer engineer / electrical engineer, so he actually started using the software to deconstruct this, and he wrote some Game Genie codes for it.
All right.
Yeah. So you should make Game Genie codes part of your homework assignment.
I love it.
Yeah. Just edit something. Turn the dogs purple. Whatever. Figure out how to reprogram. All right. Anyone that has questions, throw them in chat. Otherwise, we're going to watch Chris win the war on drugs. Either way, I'm perfectly content. Are you good on beer? Do you need one more?
I would like one more.
One more.
The war on drugs is a thirsty work. I'm pretty sure that I just killed a laundromat of people. Yeah, it's... I think I just threw that person. Alright. Alright. They count up your cocaine at the end. That's very nice of them.
It's worth points. Yeah, this is my bargain bin game right here. What do you? Oh, that's interesting. The C4 sniper. What do you think about intro classes for computer science being like 200 people?
I think that it works if we change the way that we do intro classes. And the way that we do intro classes right now really requires a lot of like one-on-one time with an instructor. So if you have questions about DMA, for example, dynamic memory allocation, it's really hard to get that if there's 200 people, right? If it's you and 199 of your friends in office hours, how do you manage that situation? That's just logistically not hard. Did that person just throw heroin at me?
It is a needle of heroin, yes.
All right, excellent. So I think that we would need better tooling, right? So I've started using Top Hat as an attempt at doing that, right? Trying to use like checkpoint questions and that kind of thing to at least identify early on when a person needs help. But we would need things like better automated, automatically graded assignments, things like that, which AI could certainly help with. And so there's a lot of interplay there as well.
So there's something weird here where you have to shoot the black guys, the guys wearing black, inside this certain area, but they have to be a certain proximity to you, and one will drop a card.
Excellent.
So I don't know
All right,
the rules that govern this.
We're just going to continue. Look at this guy. Look at this guy.
This is what the speedrunning community calls RNG, because there's no predictor of why this happens. I'm sure there is, but I don't know what it is.
All right, that's the programming assignment now.
Man, if you could figure out, so I speedrun this game, if you could figure out what dictates when and where the blue card is going to drop, there it is.
All right.
That would save me about 70% of the runs that I fail at this point right here. So hit the card slot.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Did you not? You got the card, right?
We've broken the game. I want to recount. Oh, there we go. Wow. Hanging Chad.
Yeah.
That was the whole...
Oh, man. Don't get me started. That was the first election, presidential election I voted in, and it's forever written in my brain. Top Hat is interesting. This is the first semester I've seen it. I'm thinking about going to Top Hat in the fall. What do you think about it?
So far, I haven't done any of the questions because the whole like my FSU thing blew up and it killed my Canvas. I don't know if you've had that experience,
yeah.
But it was not great.
That sucks.
So I'm about a week behind implementing actual questions, and in C# at least, like that class starts off very, very soft. So like we reteach all of Intro 1 and Intro 2 in about a week or a week and a half in the class, just in the new language. So it doesn't make sense to ask a bunch of multiple choice questions about that.
You can jump in the car.
How do I jump?
So tap B. So you have about a 3-frame tap. There you go. You're going to run into a wall, though, so this sucks. There's a pattern you have to memorize, and no one has it memorized. I apologize. It was fun while it lasted, though.
It was good. That was a good few seconds.
Oh.
But yeah, I mean, I think Top Hat offers a lot to students that Canvas doesn't. So even if you just put... Did we just like reenact training day, but in 5 seconds?
So that's a bad guy.
All right, cool.
He'll beat you up if you let him. He doesn't shoot though; he just punches.
Okay, that's a budgetary issue.
Cuddle Puppy wants to clarify, those syringes were not heroin, it's insulin. It kills you because you have a heart attack and how expensive it is.
Yeah, as a type 1 diabetic, I can 100%.
No.
I can. Oh, of course you jump over them. I was trying to blow them up. So, I mean.
So in the arcade version of it, I don't know if you're familiar with this at all, but this was originally an arcade game like you'd see in Pizza Hut, and they ported it to NES and it just lost all its detail and character, but those are supposed to be dumpsters that you can blow up with rockets.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's what my...
Your instinct was correct.
Of course, the old point blank rocket to the helicopter.
You're saying this game is unrealistic?
I think it's pretty realistic.
I like it. All right, so one of my favorite questions that I try to ask every single guest is, I watch a lot of movies and I'm always excited to see garbage or great chemistry in those movies. What movie or TV show gets your discipline right and what gets it wrong?
Gets the discipline right and gets the discipline wrong. Good lord. I'm trying to think of one that gets it right, and I'm struggling mightily to do that.
I mean, AI has become such a baddie that just can exist, right? Like,
yeah,
takes over and
computer science at large, right, has been sort of it's a trope, right? Like it, as much as it's a scientific pursuit, it's a trope that's used in science fiction all over the freaking place. My favorite movie that gets it completely wrong is Jurassic Park, right? You remember the titular scene where the person like hacks into a mainframe or whatever, and then like is able to like save the day or whatever. It's typically not that easy to do. So yeah. I'm one that gets it right. I mean, I guess like from a documentary perspective, maybe Imitation Game does a fairly good job.
Fun.
And I actually talked about that movie in class today, which I feel like is reductive, but I think it does a fairly good job.
That's really fun. Have you seen the 1990s movie Hackers?
I have not.
You should. It's a documentary. Not
Excellent.
terrible.
Excellent.
No, my favorite part of computer programming movies is when they have 3D graphics. And like you just move things with your hands, and that's what programming is.
And so there are a bunch of like super B-list, or not B-list.
So if you stay on the bottom after you get in the car, you should be okay to the end.
Maybe D-list or F-list movies. There's one called Hacker Man, and he uses a game glove. What is it called? Like a Nintendo.
The Power Glove.
Power Glove.
Yeah.
To hack a bunch of stuff, and like that's legitimately like the thesis of the movie, pretty much.
We literally have a Power Glove right back there if you want to give it a try.
I mean,
man, we need to add a category to NARC speedrun. Power Glove based speedrun of NARC.
that's perfect.
All right. Chat has some comments on movies. Very wrong. NCIS, NECIS. Two people on one keyboard hacking scene was basically a documentary. Have you ever seen that scene?
I have not.
Oh my god. I'm gonna put it in chat right now. And I'm gonna email it to you. You're gonna have a bunch of emails when you get home. It's just gonna be random crap. You're not gonna remember why we had this conversation. But you can go back to the YouTube video.
So I'm about to go to a porn bookstore.
Go all the way to the right. So the Nintendo version is cleaned up a bit. There's no hookers in this version.
So like, what happens if you go into one of the other doors?
It's a different set of bad guys, but not the key. The key comes in this one. Nice. Go right. Pretty much every level, it's go right and find a door. But in this case, after you go through the door, stop pressing up, because it'll put you through the door again.
Excellent. All right.
Oh,
God.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Oh, God. But I still have the key, right?
Yep. Yeah, you just have to get out the door. All right, there's the NCIS scene. All right. Big Bang Theory gets it right. Have you seen the Facebook movie? I don't remember the name of it.
Yeah. God, if you would have asked, I would have known.
What is the name of that? Can't remember. Oh, somebody in chat. Social network. There we go.
That's it. That's it.
So I feel like that was a fairly honest portrayal of programming. Like it didn't try to do 3D graphics. It was like actual commands.
Yeah, I think that it also is genuine in the way that software engineering accidentally screws people's lives up.
Yeah, that's true. So this is the only level you'll go left on, and those are marijuana plants.
Excellent. And I love that this is like, this feels very much like this like false wall situation back here. Okay.
So you'll have to bullet the Rambo looking guys and get a green card. So hold A instead of, and this is another one where you have to be in proximity for some reason.
I think that marijuana plant had a grenade in it.
Again, this is one homework assignment your students should figure out. I want to know what dictates when that card drops, because I don't know.
Excellent. All right.
The power glove. I'll have to talk somebody into doing the power glove on stream, because it's not sensitive and it's pretty terrible. Power glove and the running pad. Do you remember that for track and field?
Yes. And so the Wii had the like board that you stand on and do like the fitness games. We actually have one at my house, and I still don't understand why.
It's never used.
No, I mean, like, I think my wife was probably like, hey, sweet, we're going to do this. And then we never actually did.
That's like the Kinect. Do you remember the motion sensor accessory for the Xbox?
Yeah. And
It's such a fun idea. There just weren't a lot of fun games for it, actually.
No, and I think the technology has gotten so much better that when you go back to like V1 of a technology like that, you're like, what is happening right now? It feels a little bit like NARC.
No, that's true. The Wild West of game development. So yeah, that's a clown with a knife. You know, standard drug dealer.
It makes sense.
Yeah. Just go right.
No, I guess I was trying to find cash to put in the cash machine. That's not the way cash machines work.
That door right there.
Clearly I have a violence problem. I just want to like fight these people.
Oh man, we have one more prediction.
God help us.
Yep. No, it's getting late. We're several beers in. We're playing NARC, and it's time for another prediction. This one's interesting. It's a bit abstract, but I think your computer science people will probably get a good idea. All right. Do you want to give any context to intent analysis before I say go on this question?
Yeah. So we talked about this a little bit before, but there's a whole bunch of different pieces of.
So you have this card.
Oh man. Done. There's a whole bunch of like different components of natural language processing, right? Like, so when you hear a person say a sentence, you do a whole bunch of processing in your brain. And we as natural language processing sort of scientists have to figure out each of those steps and then train a machine to do each of those things in order to like come to either an action or like a decision of some kind. And that's really what this question is about.
All right, you ready? 2 minutes. All right, get your standard internet points ready. The question here is intent analysis. A model is assessing user, as we're limited by characters, but it basically says in intent analysis, a model is assessing a user's information need or their feelings. Which one of those two is intent analysis trying to predict or trying to model?
And so if you think about this from the perspective of a person getting a command, right? If your mom tells you to clean up your room, or your mom yells at you to clean up your room, that's one way of showing you what they want to do and their feeling about what they want you to do. But there's all these like subtle language choices that a person could make. Passive aggression, right? I don't know that I've got the
you have the
key.
blue card.
All right.
Sorry, I lost track.
So that's what really like we're gauging here, right? So do you understand with this particular technique what the person wants or how they feel about what they want?
All right, so intent analysis. A model is assessing a user's information need or their feelings. Which one is it? We have a 1-to-1 tie right now, but the betting is lopsided. So somebody throw your predictions in there right now. Spend your standard internet units. Make us drink, make us do factoids while playing NARC. All right, you are about to come up to the boss, which is Mr. Big, who runs this drug empire. Mr. Big is interesting. Oh, IR Noodles has redeemed Take a Drink. So, Chris, cheers. IR Noodles, thank you again. Noodle, thank you for joining us. Thank you for spending time with us, playing NARC, talking computer science. All right, intent analysis. You have about 15 seconds left. Is it trying to find information need or feelings? Which one is it trying to model? All right, so there is going to be a wheelchair guy that you have to shoot with rockets.
Okay. I love that rockets are the like shorter play.
Yeah, the faster one.
Yeah, that's.
Nice. So you got him once, you have to get him twice more. The only way to take down a wheelchair, rockets. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, you learned it here first. All right, Chris, intent analysis. What is it trying to model? Information need or feelings?
Information need.
This one was a 2-3 vote, but the people that voted information need were very confident. They were 91% of the spent internet points. So congratulations on your 1.1 to 1 payout. They knew the answer to that one.
All right, yeah.
So do you do any kind of like outcomes analysis on your exams? Like, do you have like standard exams?
So the place. Okay, so I don't have a lot of classes with exams,
Yeah.
and that's the like kind of caveat. I'm teaching a lot more intro classes where that becomes really, really important. And so I have started the process of looking at, is the format of the test unfair, that kind of stuff. And just like embarrassingly enough, I actually had a question on my first exam that was cut across pages. And so clearly that's not an ideal kind of formatting position, but it actually ended up
So he's gonna drop a gold card that you have to grab.
being a really easy question that the predominant amount of the class missed. And so I truly believe that something as easy as a page break in a question can fundamentally change the outcome. So I'm definitely going to do more of that.
Yeah. No, that's one of the reasons I started doing it, because our intuition and knowing what a question is good or bad is terrible. All right. So this is Mr. Big, the head form. So what you have to do is jump and shoot him in the top hat. If you go to the top of the screen, his tongues won't hit you, which is a sentence I have to utter every 2 weeks. She didn't think I'd have to, but here we are. So yeah, you got to get a certain distance away, turn back, jump, and shoot him in the hat. So
we're gonna be here all night.
You can go right.
I live here now.
This is the rate determining step in winning NARC. So if it's that any consolation. Yeah, so it's tap B and then A. So run right, turn back and do it again. And if you get sick of it, I'm happy to do it. We just add an asterisk on your time. So it's up to you if you want to do this video game purist, or if you want help, it's totally up to you. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, we are approaching the 11 o'clock mark. If you have any last minute questions for Dr. Chris Mills, he is happy to answer them now, especially as he's playing Big Head Mr. Big.
So it's double tap?
So it's tap B and then tap A while you're in the air. So it has to be like a less than 3 frame tap. So it's a really quick. Yep, there you go. So one of the Game Genie codes is so you don't have to jump. If you just rocket him in the face, it's over. Cuddle Puppy wants to know, what's Dr. Mills' opinion on OpenAI? I saw a documentary of it learning Dota 2, and its learning process seemed to be just be guess and check. OpenAI, what is OpenAI and what are your opinions on it?
It's better at NARC than I am. Is my first opinion. So guess and check is really at the heart of machine learning to begin with, and so you're not going to get much better than that because ultimately.
Ooh, that was close. If the rocket came out, that would have been good.
I think he just ate me.
Keep running right.
Here we go.
All right.
So I think OpenAI is a great example.
Yeah. It's a little less time on the button. Like a
All right.
tap. So
Here we go.
That's too long. If you see him squat, it's too long on the B button.
All right, so here we go.
Yep, there you go. You have to hit the A on the way down. I'm sorry, Chris.
All right, here we go.
We may have to reconsider playing this game at the end of the night. Maybe Robotron 64 should be our new game.
Damn. He ate me. All right. You have to do that 3 times?
No, just once in the hat, and then it's standing rockets, and then it's bullets. So this is literally the hardest shot in the game.
All right, here we go. Why is he punching?
I think you're holding it a little bit too long. So it's in between bullets and rockets. So yeah, bullets, that's too long. Yep, a little too long. So try A on the ground. That'll give you a feel for it. So that's too long. Yeah, there you go. It is just a tap.
Okay.
Anyway, OpenAI, what is that?
So yeah, I think this is a great point. So OpenAI is the idea that you can have a pre-trained model that then solves a whole bunch of different problems. And I am a huge fan of this just in general. And I think it's a great way of getting a general solution to a problem and potentially damn.
Yeah, so if you hit A a little later.
Man, Pizza Hut would have taken all my money.
The arcade game is actually harder than this, so they knew what they were doing.
Jesus Christ. So the idea, right, is you can reuse the same model for a whole bunch of different stuff. That is part and parcel in my mind to MVP of an AI solution. So you like build, something that's pretty good, and then you can always forego OpenAI for building your own kind of from the ground up Python model or whatever as a second step. So as a software engineer, I think I love that kind of idea. Nonsense.
Do you want me to do it?
Please kill Mr. Big.
I don't want you to rage quit on this because you're almost there. So top of the screen, the tongues don't hit you. Right. I've played this game a lot. Cuddle Puppy, you want to tell him or should I? So I was the guest on my own Ask a Scientist gaming stream where Eugene DePrince was the host, and this was one of the games I played. And so it took me about 30 minutes to beat it the first time, but then it became a running joke where every single guest, okay, so now it's bullets in the spine, but you can't shoot them at the top of the screen. You have to be basically below this line with bullets, so hold A when you get far enough away. But this started out as a joke where every guest had to play, and then somebody challenged me to speedrun it. So now I'm the world record holder in NARC. So the 9:24 time is mine.
All right.
So yes, I have played this a lot. And that jump shot is the hardest shot in the game. Oh, there you go. 1 vertebrae gone. So yeah, it's literally just walk away, turn back, shoot at his vertebrae. Another one gone. 4 left. And now I punish every guest with this, which... So one of the game genie codes that my brother wrote was that you don't have to jump shoot him in the hat, you can just shoot him in the face and his hat goes away. Which, again, I don't know how that code exists, but he came up with it. So what's crazy about this, and as a programmer, you'll appreciate this. This is dependent on your XY position as well as when you hit the trigger, whether it's going to destroy the vertebrae or not. And I don't fully understand how it works, but I have a very particular pattern I do every single time I fight this boss. One thing I do know is you have to be below, like 1 pixel above that white is a sweet spot where I shoot him. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're wrapping up soon. If anyone has suggestions on people we should raid, please throw them in chat now. Let's find somebody that can bring some of our viewers to them. Oh, nice. Down to the last 2. These are the easiest 2.
All right, great.
You're almost there.
That feels like a promise. All right,
Yep,
excellent.
Yep. All right, through that door. Now you're onto the last level. We should raid Ask an AI Gaming. Man, I'm going to give away a free idea to you, Chris. You should come up with a Twitch channel that all it does is stream machine learning trying to beat video games. Old school video games, modern video games, just iterative plays of games where it just progressively gets better. I think you would get viewers on it.
All right, let's do it.
There's the gold card. You're good. 27 minutes and 2 seconds. Congratulations.
That is something else.
Spangario, thank you for following us. But you won the war on drugs.
I feel very
You got through 70 levels of Robotron 64. Got through a little bit of Super Mario World. Played a little bit of Defender 2. K Golden Eagle, thank you for the follow. Thank you for joining us tonight. Your questions have been awesome. We've really appreciated it. It's been a lot of fun. If anyone, again, has suggestions on someone we should raid, throw them in chat now. You can throw your initials and immortalize yourself in the NARC scoreboard. At least immortalize yourself till I turn off the emulator and then it's gone forever.
Yeah. Here we are.
You feel dejected by your gameplay tonight?
Hey, look, I'm number 1. That's off. That's all that matters.
Exactly. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us for Ask a Scientist Gaming. Again, it's always a pleasure to have you. The questions lead us down paths we would never expect prior to the night because it's all over the place and we really, really enjoy it. Thank you all for joining us. And Alvin Johnson, thank you for putting me in contact with Chris. Chris, it's been a pleasure. Do you have any parting words for the audience?
Students are awesome. Thanks for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I'm really glad you're able to do this. I sent Chris a cold email saying, hey, do you want to play video games and talk science? And he was like, yes, I definitely want to do that. So hopefully enjoyed your time here. Again, if anyone has suggestions on people to raid, if not, we'll just pick somebody at random. But again, it's always a pleasure. Thank you for joining us. I'm still trying to figure out the summer schedule. It's going to be June 1st will be our next stream. Basically 2 weeks from now, I'm going to be gone at a conference. I'm actually going to Cancun for a conference, first international since
Likely
COVID.
Story.
Yeah, exactly. But June 1st, we'll be back. I'll post who that guest is going to be, and then it'll be every 2 weeks throughout the rest of the summer. So, yeah, if you guys aren't following us on Twitter or Twitch, click follow. You'll get notifications when we go live or who the next guest is going to be. But yeah, until then, it's been a pleasure, and until next time, we'll see you guys later.